Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail through pirate-infested waters. No rum-breath captains yelling over the wind. No parrots screaming obscenities. No treasure maps drawn by someone with the handwriting of a half-asleep toddler. Instead, we're traveling somewhere darker, smellier, and somehow even more dangerous. London, circa 1850. Before we wander into fog thick enough to chew, streets paved with horse droppings instead of asphalt, and neighborhoods where the smog alone could give you a 3-course lung disease, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these strange midnight journeys into the past. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere, the hour when your brain decides it wants historical misery as a bedtime snack. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan. Imagine it as the industrial era breeze, but safer and far less likely to blow chimney. Soot into your face. Get comfy, tuck your feet in, not because rats will nibble them tonight, but because in Victorian London, they absolutely would have. Let's pause. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to live in London during the age of coal, cholera, and questionable personal hygiene? Not the romantic movie version, the real one, where your morning air was 40% smoke and 60% other people's problems. Where water could kill you faster than whiskey, where children worked longer hours than you do on your worst Monday, where fog was so thick it had a texture like soup, if soup could ruin your lungs. Tonight, we'll stroll through crowded markets, peek into cramped tenements, dodge chamber pots raining from upstairs windows, and learn why you wouldn't survive a single day in 1850 London without crying, coughing, or both. So breathe, slowly. Be grateful your room doesn't smell like coal smoke, wet wool and fear. Now, let's step into the fog together. Sleepy Uguay will guide us. Chapter 1. A room the city forgot. The room is dark, cramped, and heavy with the weight of London's winter. The year is somewhere around 1850, the age of coal, empire, and endless industry. Yet inside this narrow tenement space, none of that grandeur exists. Only survival does. The walls press inward, damp and uneven, coated in streaks of green mildew that creep like moss across old stone. They shine faintly in the dim light, the moisture never fully drying, even in summer. Tonight, the cold is deepened, and the mildew breathes frost into the air. Against the far wall rests a single window, or something that once hoped to be one. Thin panes of glass rattle quietly with every gust from the alley outside. A frail layer of frost clings to the inside of the glass, forming pale white webs where each breath of cold meets the stale wind. Beyond it is a narrow alley, barely wide enough for a cart to squeeze through. No view, no sunlight, just shadows and brick. The room is smaller than it first appeared, just wide enough for a straw mattress pushed into the corner, a cracked basin on the floor, and a wooden crate that attempts to pass as a table. That's all. No fireplace or proper stove. No insulation, no comfort. Just walls, frost, and breath. A faint smell of coal smoke mixed with damp wood, unwashed wool, and something sour that sits deep beneath everything. It clings to clothing, to hair, to sleep. The kind of scent you stop noticing only because it never leaves.
Turn off that valve.
In winter, the chill crawls through every crack. Frost pushes through the floorboards. Even under blankets, fingers stiffen and sleep never truly warms the bones. Some nights, people huddle together for warmth, not out of affection, but necessity. Footsteps echo faintly from the hallway beyond. This building is alive with sound. Babies crying over thin walls. Coughing fits from neighbors you'll never see clearly. Boots stomping up and down stairs. Privacy is a luxury no one here can afford. Every life spills into the others. From the alley below comes the distant rumble of a carriage, the clatter of hooves against stone. A man shouts, a dog barks. Somewhere glass shatters. Life goes on outside, but up here in this room, time feels slower, thickened by cold and exhaustion. Your breath fogs in the air. You pull your thin blanket tighter, but it does little. The dampness eats through cloth like teeth. You can see your fingers trembling, not from fear, from temperature. There is no fire here, no guaranteed meal, no warm bath waiting. The poor of London lived with cold as a familiar companion. Each winter, a test of endurance. Water collected in the basin is icy, slick with a thin sheet you have to break before you wash. Laundry dries never fully, just grows colder. Bread, if you have it, hardens quickly. Everything must stretch. Fuel, food, hope. Many in this room share space with others. A family of 6 might crowd onto the same straw pile. Or strangers, drawn by rent, priced lower than dignity. It is not quiet, even when silent. The building creaks, pipes groan, rats scurry behind the walls, searching for crumbs. You lie back and stare at the frosted window. The alley beyond, dim and gray, even by day. Your breath rises in faint clouds. You try to sleep, but cold wakes you. Hunger wakes you. Neighbors coughing wakes you. The city itself wakes you. And dawn promises no relief, only labor. Coal dust, factory bells, endless work for pennies. The tenement room won't warm, it will not brighten. It simply waits for another night to settle, another frost to cling, another breath to fog the glass. A room forgotten by comfort. A city too busy to notice. And you, traveler from another time, did not last long. For survival in 1850 London was not about strength alone, but about endurance in the cold places where warmth was more real than reality. Chapter 2. Midnight's absurd symphony in Victorian London. Hey guys, welcome back to our dreamy misadventures. Tonight, we find ourselves tucked under a quilt that somehow both threadbare and vaguely reminiscent of a modern art installation in the South, like a failed attempt at a giant cosmic burrito. It's December in 1850 London, and while the world outside resembles an icy cheese fondue, minus the comforting warmth, you're about to embark on an expedition into the heart of Victorian madness. Now, just as a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this journey through time and absurdity, consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on what tickles your fancy. But you know, only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure. So, dim those lights, whip out your best fan to set the perfect winter ambiance, like a flustered Victorian lady trying to cool her blush. And let's dive into a night so cold that the only thing more frozen than your extremities is the hope of finding a decent pastry at a midnight bakery. Picture this. You awaken in 1850 London, greeted by the city at midnight, bathed in a silvery glow from the pale moon, struggling to break through the thick shroud of fog. You take a deep breath, and it feels as if the cold itself is giving your lungs a rather rude welcome. Ever tried to inhale winter air that's so chilled it could give your ex a run for their money in the ice-cold contest? As you peer out your window, a distant church bell rings, each chime echoing through the night like a misplaced morning alarm from a rival century, and you wonder, how many of those bells have been tolling for the unfortunate souls who wandered into a late-night absinthe bar and got into sketchy, philosophical debates with trees? Perhaps at this very moment, a druid is sitting cross-legged on a midnight tram, explaining the nuances of fog while an unimpressed pigeon looks on. A soft snow begins to fall, transforming the cobblestone streets into a glistening expanse that doesn't just resemble a romantic winter's tale, but a treacherous slip and slide for the unprepared, or simply anyone who dared to venture outside after too much mulled wine. You might think you're in a majestic postcard, but in reality, you're teetering on the brink of disaster with each step, less graceful swan and more plucky duck in a tuxedo. The frost clings to your nose, and you can't help but notice how the snow seems to whisper sweetly, "Don't slip, don't fall. Just let the historical irony lead you into the nearest hedge and embrace the absurdity." It's like daytime television. Lots of drama, questionable choices, and the occasional commercial break about how to cure your existential dread with pickled herring. As you stroll through this glittering, wintry wonderland, the gas lamps flicker, casting a golden glow, though whether it's the light's subtle charm or the fumes making you lightheaded is anyone's guess. It's a sickly yellow hue, almost as if the city had a siege of chronic tummy trouble. Imagine a celestial cheese grater waging war against reality itself, and you just might be halfway closer to understanding the ambiance. Now, let's deliberate on textures and sounds. The soft crunch of snow underfoot mingles with the muffled laughter of revelers and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carts navigating the streets, giving it a sort of Victorian symphony. Only in London can you simultaneously experience a musical masterpiece of hooves and hobnobbing, punctuated by the occasional disgruntled shout of a driver regretting their choice of route. Why are we going this way? Did I lose a bet? And can we discuss the people? Oh, delightful characters. Wrapped up tighter than a Christmas present, they flood the streets, swaddled in layers of wool and linen, like human burritos, furiously swaying to some invisible beat. There's Mrs. Witherspoon, the town gossip, who's made it her solemn duty to ask why the street lamps have suddenly begun frequenting the local saloon. The audacity. Meanwhile, men in top hats glisten like festive ornaments, perhaps pondering if there's a competitive edge to the Best Hat contest occurring in genteel drawing rooms later that week. Shouldered by the ever-charming backdrop, you are greeted by market stalls that turn into impromptu performances, where a street vendor hawks fish pies like they're the last culinary hope of humanity. One pie for a penny, guaranteed to cure your unhappy stomach, at least until you take your first bite. You can almost see the skepticism in the air, much like the faint attempt at romance lingering between you and that uncomfortably wet cat you met 2 weeks ago. And then there's the music. Oh yes, the music of the streets. The clanging of pots mingles with the squealing of street urchins devising plans to fetch the perfect snowball. It's the kind of sweet serenade that reminds you of childhood, fights with your sibling over who gets the last cookie. Bittersweet nostalgia in a snowy setting designed by someone with a flair for tragicomedy. Clara, do you think that the fog actually has feelings? Muses William, his eyes reflecting the street lamps. It's probably just jealous. Look at all of us managing to have a good time. Poor fog. Even as laughter rises, the city's underbelly churns with stories of adventure and mishaps waiting to unfold, as if every corner promises a new chapter filled with hysterical calamities born of unique Victorian problem-solving skills, or lack thereof. Ah, life in 1850 London is indeed a paradox wrapped in a frost-laden riddle. So snuggle in deeper, let your mind drift into this beautifully chaotic night, and remember that while the snow outside twirls whimsically, the absurdity of life isn't limited to any century. Just look around and embrace the bizarre, for you are now a part of this midnight spectacle. Tomorrow we will unravel more intriguing threads of Victorian life, perhaps delving deeper into the lives of the poor souls attempting to escape the icy grasp of winter while finding the warmth of frolicking madness. Sweet dreams, and stay frosty, my friends. Chapter 3, A Hearth of Dreadful Chill. Welcome back, weary traveler. As you pull your blanket a little tighter around your shoulders, let's dive into the bone-chilling truth of life in mid-19th century London. Picture this, a young lad named William, meticulously shivering beneath a tragically thin wool blanket, one that looks like it was last washed during the Great Fire of London, which is to say, not at all. You might think your heating bill is steep, but in 1850, William's idea of warmth was dependent on sheer willpower and perhaps the presence of a few very optimistic mice. Can you hear that? No? That's because the hearth is filled with gray ashes, the remains of a fire that's seen better days. The air is biting, piercing through William's meager blanket like it's auditioning for the role of most persistent winter chill. In the background, the distant cries of street vendors selling whatever you could market at -2 degrees Celsius waft through the cracked, barely there window. It's either that or the occasional drowned rat drifting by. Not quite brunch material, but they're nothing if not resourceful, those Londoners. But let's talk about the fire, or more appropriately, the distinct lack of it. This poor hearth would put the campfire scene in your favorite movie to shame. Remember those warm, cozy movie nights? Imagine trading in that ambiance for a cold reminder that the local fuel merchant had completely forgotten anyone needed warmth 3 months ago. You'd think survival skills would have moved a bit beyond just knitting a turtleneck out of your grandmother's old linens But alas, here we are. In this delightful scenario, William's idea of breakfast doesn't involve hot coffee or flaky pastries. Oh no. It's a nice, robust serving of cold porridge that might as well have been used to sculpt medieval architecture. If you've ever had a bad morning after a rough night out, you can relate. It's like that first sip of water after a night of questionable hydration choices. Except the water's also a suspicious shade of gray. Now, in our modern lives, we often long for that elusive, slow morning vibe. Perhaps sipping tea while snuggled under an infinity of blankets. But in 1850, it seems like the only supreme comfort you could hope for is avoiding the freezing wind while dodging the inevitable draft from the one window at most cottage you call home. Ever thought about the importance of bathing? Well, let's have a quick chat about personal hygiene in this era, shall we? The Victorian concept of a good wash involved a bucket and a very limited dose of imagination. This was not restorative spa time, my friend. Oh no. This was akin to pouring cold soup over yourself while standing outside during a blizzard. Refreshing sounds a bit too kind, doesn't it? They say cleanliness is next to godliness, but in 1850 London, it was more like, let's agree to settle for mildly less dirty. Personal hygiene back then certainly didn't hold a candle to the sanctity of essential oils and bath bombs that we so cherish today. You might as well be trying to detoxify your face with a slice of bread and a sprinkle of regret. And just like that unfortunate moment when you realized your last bite of avocado toast didn't go down quite as planned, those poor souls were left chuckling in a state of perpetual, well, that could have been worse, embarrassment. Imagine being William, standing in your one-room abode, researching the hottest fashion trends. Spoiler, it's going to be wool, wool, and more wool, with a dash of, why is it always so itchy? While you're at it, enjoy the slight sense of claustrophobia from your sibling's layer of wool just a foot away. You might think tethering yourself to strangers by the fireside is a significant bonding experience, but in this case, let's just say it's socializing with a side of shivering and a whole lot of why. Can't we just take turns breathing warm air? And while you contemplate your existence, you also face the bitter truth. The outside world is doing its best to outdo your murky water aroma. The vibrant scent, and by vibrant, I mean a little like a goat forgot its way home, that wafts in from the streets, is enough to send even the hardiest soul running for the hills, or at least to the corner where the neighbor finally cranked up the meager heat and invited everyone over for the warmth wars. In this absurd yet oddly relatable slice of life, you see William, bundled under layers of wool, clutching what precious warmth remains as he watches the cold creep in and life roll by outside. Outside, the faint sounds of a tubercular cough mix with the distant cheer of a child who's won a half-eaten apple as they rush past, totally oblivious to William's struggle and the relentless chill bringing the sun barely just out of hiding. Yes, you can't make this up, dear friends. Winter in Victorian London was the true nemesis of all things cozy. So, as you drift off to sleep, don't take that thermostat for granted. It's doing a much better job than any resourceful wool blanket ever could. Sleep tight, and remember, if your teeth start chattering, it's probably not the ghost of an itinerant Victorian child. It's just your unyielding will to avoid a million layers of cold air. Chapter 4. The Morning Dread of a 9-year-old. Hey there, sleepy wanderer. As you breathe in deep and sink into your blankets, let's unfurl this tale that's colder than your least favorite ex's embrace. Welcome to the charming chaos of 1850 London, where even the sun has to think twice before making an appearance. Meet young William, a boy of 9 with a face etched in soot, that quintessential Victorian decor, like a dirty canvas that could only be appreciated by a very specific art critic, perhaps a raccoon. It's early morning in winter, and as his eyelids flicker open, all he sees is murky darkness filled with the rebellious flicker of a dying candle. Imagine waking up after a night at a pop concert, where even sleep felt like a mosh pit. You, groggy, confused, and wondering where on earth you left your dignity. Congratulations! You've just stepped into the world of young William, who's maybe only one shoe away from being the world's fluffiest cold chicken. Now, picture this delightful morning scene. William stirs from a fitful night's sleep, the rasping of his throat a subtle reminder that warmth is just an idea, like dreams of being a professional ice cream taster. Breathing in what we might politely call London air, which today smells intriguingly like yesterday's fish and a questionable amount of soot. He stumbles out of bed, which, if you could even call it that, is merely a stack of straw and a thin wool blanket that looks like it's seen more trouble than an anxious cat at a dog show. What's that noise, you ask? Oh, just the delightful combination of city life. It's the honk of a distant carriage, the background soundtrack of 1,000 crammed souls stomping to their daily grind. There's a melody in those footsteps. If you squint your ears just right, it sounds a bit like a mournful dirge for those who longed for a moment free of the bitter chill. And no, that is not a choir of angels singing. It's just the frost, hitting the cobblestones like a tiny choir of disgruntled winter spirits. Now, dear listener, let's talk breakfast. An idea as comforting as a warm hug from a Yeti. In William's world, breakfast does not come from a delightful cafe with artisan toast and avocado. Oh no, it's a lukewarm bowl of porridge that bears an uncanny resemblance to cement. Ever tried to nom on cement? Maybe it's got some texture, perhaps a hint of raspberry. Not quite. Instead, it's more of a mystery mix that surely had everyone scratching their heads and reminiscing about better meal choices. Just as you sit there, wondering why you ever thought that yearning for 5-star dining was a good idea. Imagine opting for a second helping of that greyish sludge. William, with all the decisiveness of a Victorian hero, about to embark on a treacherous quest, might just be weighing the pros and cons of chipping a tooth against knowing he'll still be hungry afterward. Spoiler, he'll pick the porridge, and it will rudely remind him of his last dental visit. As he bowls through this morning mayhem, it's important to illuminate the magical adventure of washing up. Have you ever stood under a lukewarm drizzle while wearing a raincoat? Now imagine you're dousing yourself with, well, rainwater, which is precisely what the entire concept of bathing was in good old Victorian society. Yes, it's like pouring your soggy granola bar over your head. Refreshing, right? Here, the act of personal hygiene resembles a scavenger hunt, where the prize invariably seems to be just a lighter layer of filth. William wonders about the wonders of soap. Does it exist? Perhaps it's just a figment of someone's imagination, along with the concept of public restrooms and actual indoor plumbing, both mythical ideals of comfort floating around in the fog. Ah, but fear not, for should you survive your devilish morning ritual, you'll find yourself garbed in layers of wool, each more unyielding than the last. Congratulations, you've just become a human burrito, held tightly by Mother Nature's worst design decision. Will your fashion dream be wool woven with a hint of animal scent and the occasional fleck of your neighbor's breakfast leftovers? You can see it now. Ah, yes, the avant-garde look brought to you by the marvelous Huevos Rancheros from number 23. Oh, how whimsical it all is, this tiny slice of 1850 London life. So nestle down, dear friend, as William gears up for yet another day of triumphs. He'll conquer frozen air, flopped breakfasts, and the mysterious art of washing without drowning. And as you settle in, just remember, if you need to escape, just close your eyes and think of William, forever engaged in a silly struggle, doing the best he can with yesterday's porridge and tomorrow's hope of a nice warm blanket, or better yet, a magical modern-day thermostat. Sleep tight, and may your dreams be filled with warm porridge rather than cold morning chills. Chapter 5. The flickering needle of despair and a side of potatoes. Hey there, sleepy wanderer. As we continue our frosty dive into the charming chaos of 1850 London, let's take a moment to shed light on a scene that's about as cozy as sharing a bath with a porcupine. The life of a weary mother nestled by the flickering glow of a single candle. Picture this, if you will. It's late afternoon, and her bright hopes have been draped in a layer of soot, thick enough to rival the smog outside. She's hunched over, battling the fine art of fabric and thread, attempting to sew a coarse shirt, perhaps for a little one who has less hope than they do fabric. Let's first talk about that candle, shall we? This is not some fancy beeswax number, if you catch my drift. Oh no, we're talking a drippy little stub of tallow, flickering with gusto as if it had taken a shot of espresso. You can almost hear it sizzle in frustration, quietly muttering to itself, why hasn't anyone invented electricity yet? But alas, here we are, and it's present-day candlelight for our mother, the perfect ambiance for sewing, or perhaps for unraveling in despair like a cheap sweater from a sketchy marketplace. Now, take a moment to appreciate what this poor woman is crafting. A coarse fabric shirt. This is the kind of clothing that could easily double as a medieval window screen. It's so rough, you'd half expect it to munch on hay when you're not looking. When she finally manages to complete her sewing endeavor, this shirt is likely to be worn by a child who will inevitably get it dirty before she can even finish a prayer for a potato to drop from the sky. Can you imagine the pressure? You're stitching with a delicate silver needle, glancing out the grimy window every so often, as if a delivery of divine potatoes might miraculously drop down from a chariot. But it's probably just the neighbor's dog rummaging through their garbage. Yet another reminder that life is decidedly unfair, and this woman is about one whimsy away from needing a therapy loan. As dusk creeps in, the cold seems to giggle at her plight, infiltrating the house like an unwelcome friend who's eaten too much cheese at the last party. "Don't mind me," the cold whispers, wrapping itself around her like a dastardly shawl of frost, just to be particularly obnoxious. You might wonder how this woman stays warm. Will she wrap herself in her fabric creation? One need only imagine the enthusiastic reactions of neighborhood rats as they witness her unveiling a delightful new joke of a garment. Now, speaking of food, let's pivot to the kitchen, where the real adventure begins, or rather, the grim reality unfolds. Potatoes. Potatoes were the holy grail for families like hers. Each one was treated like a precious gem, and if you were lucky, perhaps you'd even find one that didn't look like it had been used as a prop in a horror movie. Ever peered into a potato sack that looked suspiciously like a crumpled magician's hat? Well, you might be closer to a discovery than you think. Surprise! It's a potato with the skin of an ancient relic. You could sell that at a local market and maybe use the profits to buy another sack of drearily similar tubers. Picture her. While she squirts the last remnants of the candle's wax on her project, a quiet debate rages in her mind. Should she sneak more potatoes today? Can she get away with haggling one off that's actually just a particularly resilient pebble dressed in bits of dirty cloth? Should she barter with the baker over some bread that might as well have been used to play dodgeball? The tension could almost be sliced with a knife, just like the crust on that bread. Ah, the wonders of Victorian life. Every stitch she sews boasts the dreams of her family, woven alongside the threads of worry and love. And yet, amidst the struggle to keep the needle from flying through the air like an over-caffeinated hummingbird, there's humor too. Her little one scuttling around, possibly trying to make the meal more appetizing by offering cooked mud pie. If only Michelin star chefs could nab a recipe for air and broken hopes. As darkness blankets the damp streets outside, candlelight illuminates the mother's weary face, every crease, every furrow peppered with determination. Who could have foreseen the battles she faces each day? Yet there she sits, sewing away, daydreaming that perhaps, just perhaps, tomorrow will bless them all with something slightly more exciting than the last potato. Yes, dear listener, this is 1850 London, a place where daily struggles are often woven together with a subtle thread of humor. And as she sews, you realize something important. While potatoes may not be the stuff of dreams, they're a far cry from the unyielding fabric of a life fraught with trials. So, as you drift off into your own dreams tonight, conjure images of a mother with needle in hand, perhaps with a slightly burnt potato on the table, whispering, tomorrow is just a stitch away. Chapter 6. The sulphurous breaths of London's fog. Hey there, sleepy wanderer. Now that we've wrapped up the warm tangle of sowing dread, let's shimmy into something colder and far more putrid than your gym socks after a week without washing. The narrow, sultry alleyways of 1850 London. Can you smell that delightful blend of coal smoke and river mud? Ah, the fresh scent of industrial growth. Or is that just the remnants of last week's fish at the market? Who's to say? Picture this. You've just stepped into the fog, where the air thickens like oatmeal left on the stove way too long, and visibility drops faster than your motivation to hit the gym on a Monday morning. You're wondering if you should bring a map, a miner's helmet, or maybe just a gas mask, because let's be honest, navigating through this sulphurous veil is about as straightforward as summoning a genie with a broken lamp. Have you ever experienced a day where you feel like you're being slowly wrapped in a cozy blanket, only to realize that the blanket in question is made from dampened nightmares and last week's newspaper? That's your welcome to Victorian London, my friend. You could practically slice the fog with a knife, but instead, you'll have to settle for slicing through the awkward conversations with the local urchins who believe flinging mud at passers-by is their spiritual calling. Ah, and the sounds. Let's talk about that delightful cacophony buzzing around you. Is that a vendor hawking moldy cabbages? Or maybe it's the sound of someone's face contorting in despair after accidentally stepping into an abyss of mud disguised as a footpath. Perhaps it's a horse heaving itself past at speeds only slightly quicker than a sluggish tortoise, with its master yelling something incomprehensible that definitely includes the words bloody and foul. You may begin to notice that every time you inhale deeply, you also might cough up a little of your dignity. The fog isn't just thick. It smells like a combination of burnt toast and what you just assumed had crawled out from under someone's bed. Can you imagine what a breath of fresh air would feel like? I mean, can anyone? The last person who thought they'd experienced fresh air probably ended up in an unfortunate gaggle of confused pigeons. Let's take a moment to marvel at the clothing choices of Victorian Londoners, shall we? While you might find yourself in breathable fabrics that would make you feel both chic and comfortable, the friends and neighbors you'll encounter are draped in layers upon layers of wool that stink of 1,000 sheep. Sure, they can fend off the cold, but at the price of smelling like a barn during Oxford's hottest month, they've clearly been convinced that wearing your entire wardrobe at once is simply all the rage. But there you are, trying to navigate this maze of cobblestones slicker than a banana peel, when you spot a possible exit. A street vendor offering something. You lean closer, squinting through the fog. Is it food? Salvation? A miracle in a bowl? Nope. Just a dubious stew that looks suspiciously like yesterday's leftovers boiled in an unwashed pot. Your stomach lets out a grumble as if to say, you're about to make a mistake. But the allure of possible beans is strong in Victorian London. After all, it's either that, or go back to your humble abode where the last meal you prepared involved more conversation than culinary skills. Leaning in closer, your nose wrinkling up at the smell, you can't help but notice the other vendors eyeballing you like you owe them a toll for passing through. "You'll need to be quick about it, dear," whispers a woman as she shoves a mysterious lump that could be either pudding or last week's unfortunate shepherd's pie into your hands. "Don't let it touch the ground, or you'll be unlucky." Because, of course, life in London isn't dicey enough without adding a superstitious layer of accidental misfortune. And let's not forget the elemental sidekicks of our Victorian adventure, the weather. Mother Nature here has the subtlety of a drunken bull in a china shop. One moment you're enveloped in sultry fog, thicker than a plot twist in a Joseph Conrad novel, and the next, rain comes barreling down like a toddler who didn't get their cookie. Ah yes, London weather, you might think. The only forecast that really needs a crystal ball. You rush down the alley, seeking refuge, but all you find is a handful of other lost souls standing beneath a chimney, spewing out coal smoke that makes every breath sound like the lament of a broken accordion. At this point, you're not trying to dodge raindrops. You're aiming to dodge the flying soot that is taking aim at your freshly cleaned clothing, which at this juncture would rather just harmoniously meld into the fog. Can you picture it? You're now a living, walking embodiment of Victorian life, covered in grime from soot, shoulder to shoulder with a cast of characters who could only be described as an eclectic collection of dreams gone awry. It's literally like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle, where not only are the pieces missing, but they also seem determined to stubbornly change shapes or simply dissolve into smoke. As you take one last look at your surroundings, you realize that amidst all this chaos and grime, ironically, there's a certain beauty in the absurdity of it all. You think about how, in a world strangled by frost and filth, these very souls find hope and humor, while trying their best to avoid the proverbial and quite literal mud. So, dear, as you drift off into the realm of dreams, maybe conjuring a world where the air smells like rain and flowers, consider this. While living in 1850s London may not seem like paradise, it was certainly a place where laughter wasn't lost, even amidst the fog and coal dust. Sweet dreams as you step beyond the sulphurous fear of this peculiar era into the warmth of your own cozy mind. Chapter 7. The Murky Embrace of the Thames. Hey there, sleepy traveler. As we gently float away from the last chapter, let's slip into something decidedly murkier than the coffee you regrettably made last Tuesday. The dark, swirling depths of the River Thames in 1850 London. Ah yes, the Thames. It's not just a river, it's a veritable soup of human existence, a blend of joy, despair, and just a sprinkle of industrial waste. It's a floody delight that perfectly captures the spirit of a city teetering on the brink of enlightenment and utter chaos. Now, let's talk a little about your surroundings. Wrapped in a cozy fog that feels less like a breathable mist and more like a slightly damp hug from a suspicious uncle, you take a moment to breathe deeply. Do you smell that? It's like the River Thames attended a barbecue, but forgot to bring the meat. Instead, it returned with last week's fish and chip leftovers and a healthy dash of humorously grim history. Yes, the aroma. Here can only be described as a mix of courage and questionable life choices. Hidden beneath this thick cloak of gray is a treasure trove of human disregard. The story of London's life and death spirals downriver with every hull of a boat that grinds through its blackened waters. Imagine 1850, where the air is thick with ambition, industry, and the kind of delightful sewage aroma that makes you feel so alive. Can you picture it? It's like being on a date with fate, where the conversation is a little too genuine, and you're just hoping for an escape route, or, at the very least, a decent handkerchief. As you stroll along, your feet splish-splash through puddles that hold remnants of a bacterial ball pit. Delightful, isn't it? You begin to ponder essential questions like, in a world where the Thames doubles as both transit and trash can, how do the locals ever find a sunny side? Or perhaps, what sort of mortal calamity lays in the depths of a river that doubles as a public toilet? Let's not forget the constant hustle and bustle around you. Boats, horse-drawn carriages, and the occasional gentleman attempting to smoke a pipe all contribute to the violent orchestra that is Victorian London. Imagine, if you will, a sight to behold. An overworked coal boat navigating with equal parts skill and luck through what can best be described as floating mischief. Every time a vessel rocks by, the very water seems to belch up its dinner, treating bystanders to a splash of unknown origin. It's like watching a bad magician. Oh look, it's gone. Oh wait, there it is again. Ah, never mind. Perhaps becoming a Thames worker crosses your mind. But let's be real. Would you survive one day? Navigating through the mud, dodging the errant puffs of steam that feel like the tempers of Londoners at rush hour. You'd need to be part acrobat, part philosopher, and part unfortunate, fully dressed diver, all at once. And then you. Remember, happiness is a relative concept here. Why not take a moment to appreciate the noble occupations of the local bevölkerung? Yes, friends, working the Thames is admirable. Just imagine explaining this career choice at family reunions. Why, yes, grandmother, I do spend my days risking my life while collecting novelty items that closely resemble fish bones. So progressive, right? But let's step into some of those unsung heroes of the river, the watermen. They're not just navigating, they're performing an awkward ballet on the renegade bubbles of pollution, while occasionally yelling at random boaters like a coach at a badly organized rugby match. No, mate, the fish aren't up for a debate. Hand me that barrel. Oh, and the fashion of this era. Nothing says, I'm a 19th century aficionado, quite like a gentleman dressed in a woolly coat that could double as duct tape for holes in rickety boats. You see, warmth was paramount, but style? Well, let's just say people settled for the color of lost hope and slightly damp charcoal. Suddenly, a dreadful squawking draws your attention from the murky waters. It's the local wildlife. Pigeons, you say? Nope. London's finest rats, dressed and perhaps overqualified for a Broadway show, push eagerly along the banks. They scamper about, searching for the freshest snacks the Thames has to offer, all while side-eyeing you with that particular attitude only a rat can master that says, look, concerning the entire human race, we are the tiny architects of your downfall. And as if that wasn't enough, here comes the weather. The sky is about as reliable as your great-aunt's tales of her youth, a waft of unpredictability laced with heavy clouds, topped with a pinch of eternal drizzle. Rain and fog play the enemy, turning each unwanted adventure into a scene of Victorian blundering. Did you think you could traverse a muddy bank and stay dry? Not in this lifetime, my friend. You've already launched into an unsinkable ship of filth and folly. As you maneuver through, pondering if you'd rather kiss a tinned sardine or reconcile with your less than peachy fate, take a moment to revel in the delightful absurdity of it all. Welcome to 1850 London, where the only constant is the inevitable blend of surprise, chaos, and just a touch of river drama, a place where even the Thames knows how to keep its guests entertained. So now, dear dreamer, as you float upon the soft edges of your consciousness, remember this tale of the Thames. It's where dreams and dinners intermingle, where the river has more secrets than a gossipy neighbor, and life itself is a muddy adventure worth drifting into. Let the enchanting atmosphere wash over you like a gentle wave as you sail softly into the embrace of night. Chapter 8. The Adventures of Cranky Footwear. Hey there, sleepy traveler. As we leave the charming murk of the Thames behind, let's shuffle our way into a realm of oversized problems. Specifically, the oversized leather shoes of 1850 London. Yes, those glorious monstrosities that look like they have survived a courtship with a particularly hungry beast and a spirited dance with a mud puddle. Now, close your eyes and picture yourself standing in a dimly lit room that smells faintly of smoke and something one could only describe as historically questionable. You swing your legs over the edge of a well-worn bed, if you can call it that, grumbling as your toes mysteriously find a cold splash of water. Let's hope it was just the rain. Your universally mismatched sock collection isn't going to make this day any easier. And the thought of putting on your shoes? Oh, imagine attempting to wear an anvil made for clowns. Spoiler, it doesn't go well. Are you ready for the epic quest to find the oversized shoes? You shuffle across the floor, aware that every step sounds like a small congregation of squeaky mice having a very public argument. Ah yes, welcome to your first trial of the day. Footwear. Now these aren't just any shoes. They are the kind of footwear that makes you question every life choice that led you to this morning. Let's be real. The people of 1850 London had no concept of comfort. You, dear listener, would feel like you were trying to paddle through 3 feet of mud while attempting a tightrope walk with oversized ducks as your audience. Now let's set the scene. You finally snap on these leather beasts, strapped tight with bits of twine. Very avant-garde. They're more scuffed than a Victorian gentleman who just realized his cravat has been tied incorrectly for the past 6 hours. How can something so obviously worn, and let's be truthful, several sizes too large, give you such a sense of moral superiority? Perhaps it's the sheer defiance you display to the universe by wearing them. Let's take a quick moment to appreciate the sensory wonderland you've stepped into, shall we? The shoes emit a glorious bouquet of damp leather, aged sweat, and just enough mystery to make you doubt whether you've stepped in a puddle of history or something more sinister. You take a tentative step forward, and a loud squelch emits from the shoe, summoning the cheerfully unexpected soundtrack of your day. Who needs an orchestra when your left foot can mimic a wet sponge? As you stumble towards the door, you may find yourself asking, is this what that TikTok influencer meant by edgy style? Or perhaps I just look like I stepped out of a cobbled horror film. The image of everyone rushing past you, their eyes widening in glee, or is that horror, is comically absurd. Most folks will probably glance at those Goliath shoes, smirk, and think, well, yes, I certainly do not want to get stuck in those, because wearing those feels like trying to outrun a mild inconvenience while simultaneously battling your daily existential crisis. Classic Victorian struggle right there, folks. Out of your front door you go, and immediately the bustling sounds of London hit you like an uninvited group of pigeons at a picnic. You see, amidst the bellowing street vendors and the occasional horse-drawn carriage that sounds like it's auditioning for a lead role in a musical about bad luck, you're left wondering how you'd keep up. Would your noble, oversized shoes give you the spring needed to sidestep what the universe has planned for you today? Spoiler, no. Alas, you are doomed to a series of awkward foot shifts and unintentional slow-motion trips. Every flailing step becomes nothing short of an opera. Take a moment to appreciate the footwear choices of passers-by. Oh yes, they all belong in some fashion magazine that hasn't been published yet. Silky boots that glide as if they've come to life, shiny brogues clicking compassionately with purpose. And here you are, groaning through what seems like an untamed forest of cobblestones, muttering thoughts like, if I trip and fall, please let it be on something mildly interesting. And yet, as you trot along with the grace of an octopus on roller skates, you can't help but chuckle inwardly at how your self-worth might be directly correlated to the comfort of your footwear. Ah yes, today's main character is the man bravely battling shoes that seem more like Vikings than defenders of toes. Imagine the gossip during lunchtime with your pals after a day of wrestling with footwear all over town. Remember Billy, the one with the oversized shoes? He's practically starting a revolution in comfort performance. Next thing you know, we'll be seeing advertisements with the tagline, "For a taste of betrayal on your feet." You glance around and can't help but wonder how many people truly appreciate the artistry of this choice in footwear. Spoiler alert, probably a zero. But it doesn't matter. You're now the unintentional star of London's quirky street theater, and there's a certain sweetness to that. Plus, perhaps you unknowingly brought laughter into lives that desperately needed it today. So, dear traveler, embrace these oversized shoes. They may feel like you're trying to walk through a brewery of pints and regrets, but there's a beauty in this clumsy adventure. You are more than just another soul crossing this age. You are a comical hero waddling through the ever-quirky streets of 1850 London. And as the sound of squeaks and squelches accompanies you through this delightful chaos, let yourself smile. Life may not always be comfortable, but it can certainly be entertaining. Rest assured, as you tread past puddles of history and inspiration, this is just the beginning. Life, you'll soon find out, is about to take you to the most absurd of places, as long as you don't accidentally trip over those notorious shoes. Chapter 9. The Barefoot Struggle of Victorian Street Urchins. Hey there, sleepy traveler. Close your eyes and prepare to experience something colder than an ice cube standoffish sibling. Mid-Victorian London. A bustling place where the cobblestones were as unforgiving as your last dentist appointment. Imagine a drizzly day in 1850, where barefoot children scuttled through the streets like adorable frost-bitten deer, all the while attempting to navigate a chaotic marketplace that has all the charm of a carnival for geriatric cats. But before we dive into this bustling mishmash, let me ask you, have you ever tried to run away from a pigeon while dodging a giant horse-drawn carriage? Perhaps you felt the cold joy of stepping on a pointy rock after a long day of bad decisions. Welcome to Victorian London, where those experiences are both daily rites of passage and amusing anecdotes best shared at the local tavern, if anyone could afford a drink after their feet have turned blue. So settle in, dim those lights, and prepare yourself for the magnificently absurd. Picture this, your morning routine in a Victorian household. What's scarier, meeting your boss in the office today, or stepping out onto the icy, cobblestone streets without a decent pair of shoes? Do you even own a decent pair of shoes? Spoiler alert, probably not. In fact, you might as well join the ranks of the street urchins, where the only thing standing between your toes and the historical frost is the hope that no one notices your plight, or perhaps a quizzical look from the local constable. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1850 London, a year where children believed that optimism could keep their toes intact, and adults secretly wondered when the last time they'd seen a bath was. The cobblestones stretch out before you, glittering with dew and the general essence of yesterday's street market, which has now settled into something between a puddle and a snack for adventurous rats. Ah, there it is, the infamous Victorian market, an exuberant carnival of noise, smell, and poorly made footwear. The air is thick with the scent of haggis, puddings, and enough unidentifiable fish to stretch the limits of your imagination and your stomach. As a child rushes by you, all bedraggled and blue-footed, you can't help but marvel at their resilience. How can they traverse those tortuous cobblestones barefoot, as if they have been granted an ancient superpower? Or maybe their parents just used up all the fabric on their new frocks. And there you stand, shoes laced like a slapstick theater prop, contemplating what your exit strategy will be if you need to make a quick escape from the crush of exuberantly yelling vendors. Crikey, get your fresh pie and doubtless literature right here, calls one vendor, while another aims to sell you something called special stew, with an unspoken promise of regret. Did anyone mention the stealth rock protruding from beneath your oversized shoe? Did it ever cross your mind that you might be leading an undercover operation as a human tap dance performance? Each step you take feels like a waddle straight out of a maladaptive biology book. Your foot squelching against the cobble with the unending drawl of surrender. Most pedestrians glide past, mindfulness fully intact, their shiny, polished leather shoes glinting like knightly armor, trampling fashion faux pas left and right. And then there's little old you, awkwardly counting the number of days you'll continue this unintentional game of will I trip or will I not? Spoiler alert, you will. Step by step, toe by toe, you find yourself wondering, do the citizens of Victorian London even have foot cream? The idea of their feet surviving the onslaught of frigid air combined with grime and cobbled regrets is as far-fetched as claiming to have moonlight in a bottle. Perhaps it's a communal secret, how to ignore minor frostbite while bickering over food scraps. You certainly hadn't anticipated that beneath the hustle and bustle of the marketplace, children, aged about 6, but infused with the wisdom of stars, leap from stray cat to stray cat. At this very moment, one of these mini particles of energy with frost-bitten toes makes a valiant attempt to catch a wayward rodent, likely in hopes of impressing a companion while securing their evening meal. After all, Victorian life for the lower class was less about culinary classes and more about survival tactics that would make even the most seasoned reality show contestant squirm with envy. As you navigate around a particularly fragrant vendor, you might catch a glimpse of a little girl, shivering but resilient. She waddles toward a stall with her frost-bitten feet making little granules of dust puff into the atmosphere behind her. Oh, how grand, you ponder. Is this a new form of performance art? Or just another day in the life of a child whose shoes are decidedly missing from the picture? And through it all, you learn a valuable lesson about resilience. Those kids smile wider than the pies they are trying to sell, even upon discovering that they may or may not be a bit undercooked. After all, in a world where warm footwear is a foreign concept, laughter remains the warmest blanket you can wear. So, here you are, dear listener, navigating the bustling market of 1850 London, facing the freezing, cobbled war zone with frost-bitten toes as your companions. And while stepping out may feel like a circus act mixed with a Shakespearean tragedy, remember, life was an unpredictable adventure for everyone, particularly those adorable children bravely trudging their way through existence, blue toes and all. And with that, let's move on to see what else historical London has in store for you. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that the absurd has only just begun.
Chapter 10. The Whimsical Sleep of Little Emma.
Hey there, sleepy traveler. Tonight, we're about to dive into the enchanting world of mid-Victorian London, where the air is so thick with fog that you could practically serve it as a side dish at dinner. Picture this. It's a chilly evening in 1850, and you can hear the gentle patter of rain. Think of it as nature's way of giving a gentle high five, but it feels more like the universe is desperately trying to remind you that your hat is tipping slightly askew. Now, have you ever wondered what it would be like to wake up, not in your cozy bed, with warm mugs of herbal tea beckoning you, but on a straw mattress, surrounded by the faint scent of last week's cabbage stew? Or maybe pondered how long you'd survive in a world where exchanging your used socks for fresh bread was a legitimate trade? So many questions swirl around like that pesky bit of old tumbleweed that seems to roll past you every time you take a stroll. What if you had to dodge piles of horse manure while convincing a pigeon to share its muffin crumbles? Life was quite the unpredictable circus back then, and tonight you're stepping right into the center ring. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1850 London, and it's raining like the skies are confused about whether they're crying or just showering everyone with the gift of pure disappointment. Before you fully awaken and panic sets in, let's take a moment to focus on a little girl named Emma. As you blink your eyes into the murky light, you notice her, a tiny little bundle of warmth nestled deep into a straw mattress that looks vaguely like a straw-filled taco. If that taco had a particularly rough week, full of hard knocks and oddly aggressive weather patterns, then yes, that's Emma's bed. Emma is just 6 years old, her matted hair resembling something that could be mistaken for a nest of very confused sparrows. She's fast asleep, her thin frame hidden beneath a quilt that has seen better days, probably during the reign of a far more benevolent monarch. Let's pause and let that sink in. Imagine staying cozy on a straw bed while dodging the potential threats of rodents shoving pieces of poorly made pastries down their tiny throats. Just the thought of Emma's situation might make you hug your fluffy duvet a little tighter, a defensive move against the horrors of Victorian bedding. So what's the deal with sleeping in 1850 London if you've never experienced this exquisite slice of historical charm? For one, you'd find yourself sharing your sleeping space with an array of interesting guests. A family of cheeky fleas, a persistent draft that moans and groans through the room like a grumpy old man, and possibly a few rogue mice looking for a late-night snack more exciting than stale crumpets. Forget about fancy sleep sounds like ambient rain or soothing ocean waves. No, your sleepy background would be an orchestra of bedbugs, creaky wood beams, and wild dreams of escaping to somewhere that doesn't involve the overly ambitious rat population. Every morning, as the sun struggles to break through the relentless clouds, you might get mixed up between the sound of rain on the roof and the distant cries of street vendors shuffling their wares, mostly indistinguishable, but one will often provoke more anxiety than the other. The faint scent of wet straw mingles with the wafting fumes of unmentionables. Indeed, nothing quite like the subtle hint of damp, homespun linens to awaken the senses. And let's not forget, living conditions were about as cozy as sleeping under a bridge made of sledging cold. But our dear friend Emma, with her sweet little dreams, navigates this chaotic world with a strength that's inexplicable. For she's had to learn the art of survival faster than you've learned to order coffee at fancy new cafes. As she dreams of castles and dashing knights, her mind might also be concocting a thrilling strategy to outwit the local cats, both in jousting and in snack procurement, because there's absolutely more hunger in the dreams of London street children than there is in a cat after hearing the jingle of a can opener. And while we're pondering Emma's life choices, let's talk about her wardrobe, or should we say, the lack thereof. Picture her in a dress that looks like it took a detour through a tornado before landing on a doll's exasperated lap. It's tattered, with a hem that occasionally makes a bid for freedom, while the sleeves seem to have run for office, but failed spectacularly. Still, Emma wears it with pride, unique to those who understand that a warm smile is the best accessory and practically the only one she can afford. But here's a fun thought. Despite the surreal landscape of human existence in 1850, amidst the frigid rain and possible tetanus from poorly constructed shoe wear, there's a twinkle in Emma's eye. Perhaps it's the absurdity of
trying to barter a half-eaten biscuit for a shiny button, or the fact that she once outran a feral dog by pretending to be a fast-moving cabbage. There's a beautiful resilience in her spirit, akin to a defiant little dandelion poking through the cracks of a grimy London sidewalk. As you watch this young girl snugly asleep, grasping tightly to her dreams of adventure amidst the wheezing of the clamorous streets, you can't help but think, that's one way to be. Surrendering to sleep amidst such colourful chaos is more brave than you might realize. So let's inch a bit closer into the tales wrapped inside her dreams, where safety layers over laughter like extraordinarily cozy wool. Because who wouldn't celebrate the gift of warmth and whimsy, even if it comes stitched together with a touch of resilience and a dollop of barely warm porridge? Now, let's prepare to snuggle deeper into Emma's chaotic yet whimsical world. Could there be stories of grand adventures groggily waiting around the corner? Or perhaps a surprise or two amidst the straw? Let's find out together, shall we? Chapter 11. A Night in a Crowded Rookery. Hey there, sleepy travelers. Tonight, we're diving into something chillier than your neighbor's glare when you borrow their lawnmower without asking. The depths of a Victorian London rookery. Imagine a cramped little abode where warmth is a community effort and the air is as thick as a pudding pie at a poorly attended bake sale. Now, before you roll your eyes at how unappealing life sounds here, because honestly, it's about as inviting as an optometrist's waiting room, let's take a moment to thank the stars you don't have to share your cramped living space with 4 generations of your relatives, all convinced that your sleeping habits sound like an avant-garde performance art piece. So, gather around and let's set the mood. Dimming the lights, eh? Perfect. It's just the kind of tranquil ambiance you need as I ask you to picture this. Do you think it's possible that someone could accidentally start a fire just by sneezing too? Forcefully? Or how about this?
What would we do if our neighbors suddenly started living under our very beds in the form of creaking floorboards? Ever thought your Wi-Fi was slow? Imagine if your entire communication system revolved around hollering through thin walls, desperately trying to let your bestie know that the rat stole a piece of stale bread. Congratulations, you've just woken up in a crowded rookery of 1850 London, the equivalent of a very questionable Airbnb, but with more vermin and less Wi-Fi. The room is filled like a sardine can, with people and their dreams all tangled together on straw beds that are basically nature's long-standing joke on comfort. The scent of something that can't quite decide whether it's wet straw or last week's cabbage stew wafts through the air, mingling with those hypothetical dreams of better days. Your first task? Determine if you're waking up in a bed or an audition for a particularly chaotic one-act play titled Who Farts at Midnight? Listen closely, and you'll notice that every small breath you take seems to attract a chorus of sleepy snorts, squeaks, and maybe a symphony of gentle snores layered over the distant clangs of the London streets. It's a musical masterpiece conducted by the ghost of a long-forgotten composer whose only job was to ensure everyone slept with one eye open. The room is packed tighter than the last subway ride before a concert. Families huddle together, sharing body warmth like they're trying to win a group huddle competition. Children, like our little friend Emma, nestle under patchy quilts that seem to have a flair for dramatic flair. They huddle for warmth, but let's be honest, they also probably provide some genuine home improvement advice to the adults. I mean, have you ever tried rearranging a room with 8 other people breathing down your neck? Suddenly, your living room feels more like a game of Tetris, where half the blocks are falling as fast as your sanity. And let's not even talk about the entertainment. The walls are adorned with an intricate collection of damp, peeling wallpaper that boasts a design you're sure the committee forgot to approve. You could practically hear the paint chipping away in discontent. This is the place where gossip travels faster than the flash of a camera. Something that doesn't exist, naturally, but the art of storytelling, it's alive and kicking. Every creak of the floorboards whispers, "You won't believe what Mrs. Wainscott found in her stew last night." But as madness swirls around you, don't forget about warmth. A singular fireplace cradles the hopes and dreams of everyone in the room, performing its best impression of a half-hearted bonfire. It spits and crackles, fueled by the memories of better wood, while a spirited debate plays out over who will snag the last piece of charred potato from last week. Yes, charred potato, a delicacy only the most resilient of Victorian space Londoners dared to try. And while you think about the culinary selections of this bustling commune, perhaps it's worth noting the peculiar dining arrangements. What's dinner like? Would you be shocked to find that it might involve a hearty stew with the serious question of if today's meat is more of mystery or mystifying? A hearty consensus emerges around the table.
sharing dinner-serving platters that resemble a medieval potluck, where everyone is uncertain if it's polite to inquire about the origins of the main ingredient. Spoiler alert, it's best not to. Now picture Emma again, as she dreams not just of sugar plums, but of lounging in a castle with warm blankets and food that wasn't once someone else's dinner leavings. Living in a rookery might have fostered even the wildest imaginations. She's concocting plans to create the ultimate den of comfort, complete with fantastical, oversized pillows and fluffy clouds made out of whatever passing clouds can spare. Every rustle from the outside simply spurs Emma's determination, for she's going to prove that even the tiniest among us can dream the biggest dreams, even while dodging a flock of pigeons that are really just trying to steal her breadcrumbs. So, as you settle deeper into this roiling, noisy sea of Victorian goldfish, remember that every rickety floorboard crunch beneath you carries with it tales of survival, tales laced with quirky humor, and tales far more entertaining than washing 1,000 linens by hand, which is exactly what you'd be doing had you been plopped into the life of those Victorian ladies. As night slips on, it becomes perfectly clear. Amidst the chaos of their lives, the strength of community creates a bond warm enough to overshadow the crumbling walls and suspicious smells. It's a humorous lullaby, birthed from chaos, that steals the very essence of everyday life in 1850 London, with a wink and a nod at our own absurdities. And as you drift off into the silly dreams of this crowding huddle, sleep will find you, a welcome companion, woven together by laughter and love in even the darkest nights. Now, let's tiptoe further into this enchanting, eccentric world, shall we? Chapter 12. A broomstick standstill in the East End. Hey there, low-energy explorers of the past. Tonight, we whisk ourselves away to a quirky corner of Victorian London, specifically the bustling streets of the East End, where the grit, grime, and overly ambitious pigeon population make for a delightful journey. It's like stepping into the world's most chaotic theater production, but instead of actors, you've got merchants hawking their wares and street urchins who might just snatch your shoelaces for a laugh. Now, before we plunge into this merry maelstrom of historical hilarity, let me ask you, ever stood on a street corner so busy that you wondered if you'd accidentally wandered into the world's worst game of Frogger? Or how about waiting for a bus so long that instead of commuter mindfulness, you started considering your career as a street performer? Spoiler alert, it would likely involve juggling unseen objects and the correct use of not getting hit by a carriage. Imagine this. You find yourself in an 1850 London scene, so vibrant it could fuel a decade's worth of Pinterest boards on overwhelming sensory experiences. The air is filled with the tantalizing aroma of meat pies, sizzling so close to being delicious that it's practically toying with your taste buds. Yet, you also catch a whiff of something that can only be described as mystery stew. Because every good Victorian knows that spare food scraps were simply creative culinary opportunities. Of course, being in the East End means this conjures up an existential crisis that begins with, what is that? Is that supposed to be edible? Can I eat it? Welcome to the East End, where chaos reigns supreme, and as you blink away your morning fog, you find yourself face to face with none other than William, a determined chap wielding a tall broom made of rough twigs and birch branches, like some kind of medieval janitorial knight. Let's take a moment to understand our friend.
William, shall we? As the clock ticks somewhere beyond comprehension, he stands at the corner like a statue, nearly lost in the bustle of life swirling around him. His demeanor is as serious as a squirrel contemplating acorn investment strategies. But instead of fretting over stock options, he's got a front row seat to the swirling mass of humanity that floods past. Loud merchants shouting prices so loud it feels like they've invented their own form of opera, and shoppers who seem to have mistaken the sidewalk for their personal running track. William's broom? Well, it's not just a cleaning tool, though it does a valiant job of that. It's practically an accessory in this era, an extension of his purpose. Look at me, wielding this stick of destiny, he might as well declare, as he sweeps with the grace of a college dropout who just discovered interpretive dance. Alas, he's here to keep the streets from turning into an exaggerated version of Mother Nature's unkempt. Living room, a reminder from the universe that cleanliness may or may not be next to godliness, but it's definitely next to a pair of pigeons engaging in a curious avian debate. Picture this. Every wisp of dust William lifts finds itself mingling with the magic of the marketplace, where scents mingle like an awkward first date. The scent of overripe vegetables decides to join forces with the essence of freshly baked bread, creating a delightful bouquet that might make one ponder if they're about to be ambushed by a very enthusiastic pie thief. It's as comforting as a poorly written nursery rhyme, and twice as messy. And as you observe William diligently sweeping, isn't there something almost noble about it? Perhaps it's the gentle inclination of his head, or the way he occasionally breaks into a wry smile, acknowledging the chaos of life like a good-natured bystander in an over-the-top comedy. And let's face it, if you think today's hustle and bustle is hectic, try ducking the errant horse-drawn carriage facsimile alongside, avoiding the daily dance-off from the street musicians who have yet to synchronize their tempos. William's just trying to enjoy the show while keeping the stage ever so slightly tidy. You can't help but chuckle at the absurdities unfolding. There's a lady in a high-necked dress frantically jockeying her way past a man selling shiny trinkets that may or may not have once belonged to a dubious pirate. And let's not forget the dapper gentleman clutching a top hat that seems to have a wicked life of its own, bobbing precariously as he zips and zags through the crowd, possibly auditioning for a role in a play where gravity is merely a suggestion. And William? Well, he remains unfazed, his broom dancing through the dirt like an elegant sword in the hands of a surprisingly patient duelist. Despite the clamoring of the townsfolk around him, he finds joy in this odd ritual. Sweeping and twirling, he's fully present in the mayhem, embodying a Zen state of mind so perfectly that if mindfulness were a sport,
he'd be the reigning champion. Now, if you ever want to know what truly defines people during this time, just observe the way they treat their broom-wielding savior. Children offer toothy smiles of camaraderie. They admire him as if he were a knight, dutifully warding off the squawky, misguided romantic notions of pigeons attempting to court stray crumbs. Me? I'm sitting here wondering if they're aware of how lucky they are to have such a devoted street sweeper. If they only understood, they wouldn't need expensive therapy. As the day rolls on, the buzz of activity hums softly like an off-tune ukulele. And amidst the urgency of life, somehow there's still an unassuming beauty in earning a living day by day, neighborhood by neighborhood. And remember, dear dreamers, while we may not have a broom like Williams, we too have our very own sweeping challenges that whisk us into
the wild ride we call life.
As you start to drift off, just imagine this urban ballet, or even the chaotic dance of Victorian London seems like a quirky comedy we'd binge-watch obsessively on a rainy afternoon. Stay cozy, and just maybe, you will find your very own East End adventure waiting for you in the world of dreams. Now, let's tiptoe a little further into the tapestry of the quirky and chaotic life of London. Chapter 13. A top hat and a walking stick in the East End. Hey there, lovely dreamers of the obscure past. Welcome back to your time machine, where we're about to take a whimsical dive deep into the bustling heart of 1850 London. Think of it as BBC's Doctor Who, but with less time travel and more top hats. Tonight, we're embarking on a skirmish through the cobbled streets, an exploration so rich in oddities that even your most peculiar relative would raise an eyebrow and say, "What madness is this?" So, batten down the hatches, prepare to engage your imagination, and do me a favor. Try not to spill any of that mysteriously ambiguous meat pie on yourself. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to live in a time when people wore more wool than a sheep convention? Or to consider that your biggest conundrum might revolve around which muddy section of street to avoid, like a version of Human Frogger, but with a side of horse manure? Spoiler alert, you'd lose. Okay, dear listener, dim those lights, fluff your pillows, and let the sounds of the past cradle you. Picture this. You've just woken up in the bustling streets of 1850s London, right smack in the East End. It's a zany world where the air is so thick with intrigue that you might as well be opening a can of sardines. Every breath comes with a surprise. Now, ushering you into this delightful chaos is our friend Sinclair, a rotund gentleman wrapped in a heavy wool coat that's probably seen more rain than the Thames itself. He is trotting down the street with all the grace of a slightly drunken penguin, sporting a silk top hat that sits so precariously that you wonder if it's auditioning for a Broadway show on its own. As he sashays past you, he clutches a silver-topped walking stick with all the fervor of a knight holding on to Excalibur, destined to conquer, well, whatever it is you conquer in East End fog. Perhaps it's simply avoiding a pigeon ambush or purchasing one of those meat pies that seem to multiply like rabbits at a family reunion. You can't help but wonder what exactly qualifies as a successful day for Sinclair. Let's chew on that question a little.
Picture Sinclair glancing down at a child. Let's call him Oliver, a scrappy little chap with cheeks so sunken one might wonder if he was auditioning for a role as a Victorian ghost. Now, Oliver gazes up at Sinclair, perhaps considering whether he should request a shiny coin or simply try to grab his mustache for extra warmth. Ah, yes, the relentless negotiation skills of the impoverished, like trading the essence of hope for a whiff of a meat pie. But do you know what would be truly mad? Sinclair's absolute obliviousness to the chaos around him. He strides on, strutting through the swirling pandemonium of merchants shouting out prices, children playing a dangerous version of dodgeball with horse-drawn carriages, and faint echoes of street musicians attempting to harmonize. It's an act of absurdity, like watching a cat attempt to master the piano while simultaneously engaged in an existential crisis. You've got to appreciate the audacity of this moment. Sinclair's coat practically glistens as though it's auditioning for a position as the world's fanciest tea cozy. And yet, here he is, looking to the well-to-do of London like a walking dessert tray. But let's step outside the funhouse mirror for a moment. Is he even remotely aware of the reality around him? As you follow him through the foggy streets, let's talk about what lies beneath that facade of elegance. The stench of sweat and coal, and let's not forget the persistent aroma of fried food, which is really just a euphemism for the underlying mystery stew bubbling in the corners of every alley. The smell is less Gordon Ramsay's favorite meal, and more, did we feed that last night's leftovers to the neighbor's goat? Imagine that scene, Sinclair, obliviously, navigating what might be one of the most manic episodes of a Victorian sitcom ever conceived. What do you think goes through his head as Oliver watches the world unfold? Perhaps I should donate a coin, he muses. Meanwhile, you can practically hear the internal dialogue of our young bystander. If I could only swipe his hat, I'd be living the dream. And so it is, this peculiar ballroom of street life unfolds. Sinclair, blissfully ignorant of his rank emanating from atop his woolly perch, while the lowly children weighing their coinage in hopes of instantaneous fortune, breaks into a jig of their own. It's a swirling dance of misfortune and ambition, an unintentional commentary on the socio-political climate of the day. You can't help but wonder, if Sinclair discovered that his hat was a portal to an alternate universe, would he still fancy it over a genuine connection to a human being? Because here's the kicker. He might be stuck in an endless cycle of bourgeois pursuits. But Oliver might one day rule the streets with a wink and a smirk. As you close your eyes and let the visions of East End London cradle you into a deeper slumber, remember this dazzling chaos. There's a certain beauty in absurdity, and who knows, tomorrow you might just find yourself mid-street, decked out in silk, ready to strut through your own little adventure, with or without a top hat, but hopefully with fewer pigeons. And as gently as a summer breeze sways through awnings, let yourself float away on the clouds of imagination. The night is young, and your dreams are waiting for you. Sleep well, my whimsical explorer, for the narrative is only just beginning. Chapter 14. The Grand Carriage Caper. Hey there, lovely dreamers of the murky past. Tonight, we're steering this delightful time machine into the wet, murky streets of mid-Victorian London. Think of it as stepping onto a stage where the actors are utterly clueless,
And by actors, I mean both the wealthy and the unfortunate souls who are merely trying not to get squished by horse-drawn carriages. Imagine being whisked away to a time when all the transportation options seemed to combine gallivanting with chaos, and your daily commute was much more dangerous than a game of whack-a-mole at a carnival. You're about to witness an era where being a pedestrian could turn you into roadkill faster than you can say Victorian drama. Will you dodge a rogue horse? Will you find the nearest meat pie appreciation society? Who knows? Now, before we embark on this adventure, feel free to engage with the content. Like, subscribe, and drop us a comment, only if you feel a tiny tickle of joy from this, of course. It's not like I'm trying to build a Victorian fan club or anything. All right, dim the lights, grab your favorite blanket, and let's cozy up for an immersive romp through 1850s London. Close your eyes and imagine yourself battling the whims of a chaotic city. Have you ever had to dodge a disgruntled pigeon while trying to look dignified? Or perhaps you've navigated a sidewalk reminiscent of a muddy slip and slide after a rainstorm. Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing you've been transported to a time where the sophisticated fashion involved a lot of wool, and I mean a lot. And so, here we go. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1850 London. And let's talk about what you see, or don't see, due to the thick fog that seems to be in a committed relationship with the cobblestones. Oh, and look, here comes a grand black carriage, thunderously drawn by two powerful horses that might as well be part Mustang, part Stampede. As the carriage barrels down the street, the horses' hoofs create a rhythm more chaotic than your neighbor's attempts at karaoke. Mud and slush fly across the narrow sidewalk. You could swear it's just like being at an unwanted mud wrestling contest, but with the added charm of Victorian merit badges for avoiding horse droppings. The street feigns sophistication as the horses kick up a scrumptious variety of dirt and grime, like a culinary experiment gone horribly wrong. Take a deep breath, or don't. You've just inhaled a combination of coal smoke and mystery stew aromas wafting from an alley. For a moment, you might wonder if you've wandered into an improvisational theater production. The woes of Team Unfortunately Muddy. Now, let's focus on that carriage. Do you see how it enters all grand and imposing? Yet, if you look closely, it's not just a gentle, noble mode of transport. Oh no. Let's call it what it is. The Victorian equivalent of an overblown Uber. The driver looks like he's practicing for a role in a Shakespearean tragedy, while grumbling louder than the worst backstage drama. I can just imagine it. Is this the way to the Queen's tea party? Because if so, we're all going to die of mud. Or worse, rusticated gossip. Inside the carriage, the occupants likely drape their fine silks and satins over their lap, with all the grace of a cat trying to climb a tree while wearing roller skates. Imagine the regal drama. Oh, darling, isn't today just sublime? Says Lady Agatha as she nonchalantly brushes mud off her hem. Meanwhile, Sir Percival in the corner is merely trying to figure out
if that last meat pie was worth the 10 shillings, or if he's just committed to a life of bad decisions marinated in mystery flavoring. Look at them, swathed in layers of fabric, more opulent than a cake from a baker who definitely had a few too many decorating tools. The two are the epitome of romantic tragedy. They may be sipping their tea from gold-rimmed cups, but you better believe that problems are afoot, like the unfortunate reality of bathroom facilities existing roughly 2 miles away and being mostly just a glorified hole. Can you see it now? The carriage strides forth as if holding a royal ball, rolling majestically right toward you. Just imagine, in the time it takes for them to arrive at the next gala, they could write a novel about their overly complicated lives. Well, it rains more than it shines. Did you wear the brocade or the taffeta? And whatever you do, don't sit near Lord Snorefest. He might be wearing cologne that's actually just old bacon fat. And there it goes. The carriage thunders past, sending a spray of rainwater. Water you'd think fell straight from London's skies instead of questionable buckets, right onto your freshly polished shoes. Just like that, you're no longer a simple dreamer, but rather an unfortunate participant in a Victorian slapstick comedy. But there's beauty in this absurdity, isn't there? Whether it's dodging muddy surprises from errant carriages, or figuring out whether to wade through the muck, or attempt a daring leap that would impress Olympic athletes. Every encounter offers a slice of adventure. So, dear listener, as you think about how our friend Sinclair might navigate such chaos, let's allow the mess to wash over us, quite literally. Who knows? Tomorrow, you might just find yourself navigating your own sea of chaos, hopefully with far fewer horses and muddy surprises than our friends in London. Settle down now, my whimsical traveller. Dreams await amidst the chaos. Sleep well, and let the whispers of London streets weave you into a tapestry of delightful dreams. Chapter 15. The Manure Chronicles. Hey there, delightful dreamers of all things muddled and mucky. Just when you thought the Victorian streets couldn't get any quirkier, we're about to sweep you right into the life of our unsung hero, William, who has a very special relationship with horse manure and the art of crosswalk maintenance. Yes, it's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Now, let me set the scene for you. Imagine a gray morning in mid-Victorian London, where the fog is thicker than a politician's excuses, and the stench of coal smoke mingles with the less than delicate aroma of horse byproducts. If you've ever walked through a crowded city and thought, wow, this smells like regret and desperation, then welcome to William's world. As you open your eyes to this historical theater, let's take stock here. You're in 1850, standing in a bustling thoroughfare where life is busy, noisy, and decidedly fragrant. You've got wealthy gentlemen sashaying about like peacocks in tailcoats, because nothing says, "I'm better than you," quite like a coat that could easily double as a small tent. Ladies in their extravagant hoop skirts are attempting to navigate the very same muck you're standing in, as if the mud were an elaborate dance floor, the slosh and sidestep. And there you find William, our doughty laborer, caught between the majestic carriages and the clear lanes of devastation laid out before him. Armed with nothing but a wooden broom that looks like it was borrowed from a witch's broomstick convention, he diligently sweeps away the thick brown sludge, a mixture of horse droppings and what can only be described as the artistic remnant of last night's fish and chips. Yes, it's as lovely as it sounds. You could almost hear William muttering under his breath, "Every day is a wild pursuit of the perfect crosswalk, and today all I've got is a broom and a dream." This is not your average 9-to-5 fantasy, my friends. No, this is
Life as a Victorian street cleaner. And let me tell you, he's more essential than you might think. Imagine a lively afternoon with the sun making a token effort to shine, having a good laugh at William's expense. Wealthy citizens strut by, completely ignoring the painstaking efforts of our brave hero. You know the type, oblivious to the real world, too busy being preoccupied with their top hats and the latest gossip about who wore last season's bonnets. Heaven forbid they actually acknowledge the very mantle of reality beneath their feet. William could be swept away in a never-ending cycle of disinterest. But no, he takes this ridiculous job seriously. With each sweep of his broom, he's the unsung hero of London, facing the daily muck with dignity and an inexplicable sense of humor. Picture him trading quips with fellow workers as they dodge the occasional stray kitty, or, worse yet, a slip on their newly polished shoes. Bet you didn't think that was on the Victorian job hazard list, did you? Me? I don't have time to slip in horse poop, he says, puffing out a chest that lamentably lacks any embellishment. I'm too busy contemplating the intricacies of mud versus muck. As a wisp of an idea floats into William's mind, or perhaps just the idea of what a nice warm pie would taste like, one must wonder, is this not akin to a modern-day office worker tackling a printer jam while fantasizing about unmarked snacks in the break room? Yes, the eternal dream. Effortless joy amidst the patience-testing tasks of an uninspiring workday. And while he loses himself in this reverie, splat! A horse passes by, and without warning, his daydream bursts into a river of reality. Mysterious droppings rain down around him like very poorly timed confetti. Did you ever think you could be that fortunate? Perhaps he'll win the award for Most Creative Sidestep. Picture him now, frantically dodging the onslaught of nature's unwarranted gifts. Not even the most athletic among us could prepare for that Darwinian challenge. Will he dodge, weave, or simply embrace his fate, proclaiming, "I should have brought an umbrella"? Just think about it. A 19th century version of a modern hipster with a daily Java fix, lamenting the lack of oat milk as he discovers the art of meticulous footwork in muck. But before too long, the street returns to its chaotic rhythm, while William resumes his back-and-forth dance of cleaning the thoroughfare. You might even hear the occasional comment from a passing lady. I declare, that man could use both a blessing and a better broom. Ah, how kind of her. Little does she realize that William holds the key to the very aesthetic she vaunts. Portability at its finest, with a side of sweet, sweet sanitation. All the while, have you considered the witty banter he might have with his fellow labourers? Ah yes, my friend, It's either this or becoming a chimney sweep. And let me tell you, that's not a glamorous après job either. Imagine the daily debates over who has the tougher job. A real dilemma worthy of the finest Victorian salons. And as the day wears on, you can sense his spirit. It's both scrappy and good-natured. Our good friend William labors not just for the avoidance of stepping into horse droppings, but to contribute to his beloved city's ever-evolving story. So, as you drift off into dreams, consider the unsung heroes in your own life. Who is quietly navigating the muck? Embrace the laughter through sleep, dear listener, and remember, even among the chaos and muddy ruins, there's a silver lining, and perhaps a light-hearted chat about the ridiculousness along the way. May you find rest as profound as William's dedication to what it means to sweep through life while navigating the stormy mysteries of muck. And if you should find yourself atop a muddy puddle tomorrow, just blame it on 1850s London. Now, let the dreams of grand carriages and lesser things wash over you. Chapter 16. Holly Jolly Hustle. Hey there, sleepy explorers of absurdity. Tonight, we're diving deep into a scene more festive than Aunt Edna's fruitcake at the holiday table. Picture this. Mid-Victorian London, 1850. The air is thick with the unfortunate blend of coal smoke and the aroma of questionable street food. But wait, what's that in the distance? Is it a choir of jubilant holiday carolers? No, it's the strangled scream of a street seller. Ah, winter greens are in the air. But before we plunge into this quirky street-side encounter, take a moment to cozy up. Whether you're nestled in your favorite blanket or fidgeting on a chair with questionable lumbar support, now's the time to grab your snacks and dim those lights. Have you ever pondered what life might be like for a street vendor in 1850? How would you keep your wares warm when the very air hurts your face? Ever tried shouting at strangers to buy your goods while dodging the occasional rogue pigeon? What would you do if a horse just decided to drop a fresh surprise on your meticulously arranged holly and berries? Spoiler alert, this was a year not known for fur-lined booths and heating lamps, but for tenacity, a dash of chaos, and maybe a bit of humor. Congratulations, dear listener. You've just woken up in 1850 London, where the fog clings to your lungs like an unwelcome guest at a party. Look around. You can almost hear the hustle and bustle of life, punctuated by the occasional shriek from an unfortunate passerby who just discovered that stepping in something less than pleasant is practically a rite of passage here. As you pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders, you see her, a woman with a tattered shawl, the kind that looks like it's survived more winters than a hedgehog with a thick wallet. Her hair's a wild halo, and her cheeks glow brighter than a butcher's fist after a well-aimed jab. She's got her hands full of vibrant green holly adorned with glistening red berries, like little drops of holiday cheer on a backdrop of despair. "Buy your winter greens," she calls out, her voice a melodious entreaty that cuts through the din of the city like a knife through hard butter. "Fresh holly for decoration, red berries for your Christmas cheer." But let's be honest, you can't help but wonder if she means cheer or if this is more a cry for survival. Picture this. Her stall, if it can be so called, is a rickety crate balanced precariously on a cobblestone street, like a bad idea that refuses to die. Customers shuffle past, wrapped in their own insecurities and layers of wool that were likely made from sheep who had their own reservations about this bitter weather. "Holly, get your holly here," she shouts again, probably knowing full well she could make more noise than a marching band on parade day. The modern-day equivalent? Think of a farmer's market influenced by winter, but only half as pleasant. Imagine trying to sell a vegetable variant of a sad Instagram post, while everyone else is busy trying to find happiness in overpriced lattes and yoga classes that start with namaste. The street seller's wares clash with the stark backdrop of London town, a town painted in various shades of gray, with occasional pops of color from newspapers as they flutter away like confused pigeons. "4 pence for a bunch," she yells, waving her arms like a mad conductor, orchestrating a very confused orchestra made entirely of rotting vegetables and unsold wares. "Look at this festive greenery. It smells fresher than my neighbor's last attempt at roast chicken." And just like that, you can feel the tension of the trade, the delicate dance of salesmanship, where each shout holds more ambition than an aspiring painter in the Louvre. Yet, there's something almost joyous about it. You find yourself imagining her as a Victorian fairy godmother of sorts, casting spells of "buy my greens," rather than "you shall go to the ball." As you delve deeper into this chaotic scene, consider the determination required to peddle wares amid laughter, jeers, and the occasional horse-drawn carriage, indicating that a very unfortunate day is about to unfold for anyone in its path. The vendor doesn't miss a beat, barking more sales pitches. "Holly, it lasts longer than your last relationship, and it's much less messy." You can't help but chuckle, imagining her engaging in a side hustle cheerfully, while people like William from the previous tale sweep away untold amounts of deposits from horses in a not-so-adorable manner. How's that for a blender of historical charm and modern complaints? People pass by, mostly indifferent, but then a little girl with an irresistible smile halts in front of her, eyes wide and sparkling with enthusiasm. "Can I buy some?" she chirps, clutching a couple of pence like they're the winning lottery ticket. The vendor beams, and for a moment all the grimness of the bustling London street dims, bringing a flicker of something approaching warmth to the frozen, fog-cloaked reality. Before long, the girl is off, clutching her bunch of holly as if it were a crown jewel, delighting in the simple joy of the moment. It's pure, unfiltered happiness, the kind you could only hope to bottle and serve at feasts throughout eternity. Meanwhile, our determined vendor waves to the retreating figure,
casually eyeing the approaching pedestrians like a hawk searching for its next meal. "Holly, get your wintergreens. They're cheaper than your ex's excuses," she bellows, and whether she knows it or not, she's become the very heartbeat of this bustling square, one shout at a time. The sky darkens, and you can almost taste the anticipation for whatever mischief this street vendor will incite next. But perhaps the greatest lesson here is to appreciate the absurdity of life. Even in a Victorian winter, one can take pride in the simple joys of selling holly and keeping the spirits bright, one shout at a time. So as you drift off to sleep, know this: the hustle never stops. And neither did the laughter, just like the curious curves of life that seem to make everything more interesting. Chapter 17: Copper Coins and Comebacks. Hey there, whimsical wanderers of the realm of sleep. Tonight, we're taking a delightful jaunt through a world where the aroma of roasted chestnuts mingles awkwardly with the faint whiff of, shall we say, less hygienic street activities. Welcome to mid-Victorian London in 1850. Picture it now. The sky is as gray as an overcooked piece of bread, and the streets are bustling with more characters than a Shakespearean comedy gone wildly wrong. Imagine your cheeks turning as rosy as a London rose, not from merriment, but rather from the sheer chill in the air that saps your will to live, or at least to leave your house. But hold on, is that the squeaky sound of horse-drawn carriages rattling in the distance? Or perhaps it's just the nervous clattering of your sanity, desperately seeking some form of warmth and solace in this chaotic carnival of existence. Take a moment to cozy up. Grab your blanket tighter than a Victorian maiden clinging to her modesty, and dim those lights. We're diving into the world of street vendors hawking their wares, where bartering is a form of art and dodging horse droppings is an Olympic sport. Now, have you ever wondered what it would be like to barter for cabbage while fending off pigeons that have more street cred than most rock stars? Or imagine trying to juggle a basket of fresh produce while keeping an eye out for over-enthusiastic pickpockets. Did you remember to secure your silk purse at the waist like a true Victorian? Spoiler alert, you wouldn't last a day here, unless your primary skill is telling fortunes with very little accuracy. Congratulations! You've just woken up and landed smack dab in 1850 London, where the fog is thicker than your great aunt's pancake batter, and life is a lesson in perseverance, patience, and a rather chaotic sense of humor. Before you stands a bustling street scene, teeming with vendors and pedestrians, who all seem to be in a perpetual state of motion. If there's an invisible race to reach, well, nowhere in particular. Look closely. There she is, a woman draped in a tattered blue velvet cloak, which might have been fashionable once, but now appears to have been involved in a street brawl with a flock of feral cats. Her matching bonnet, a delicate structure defying the elements, frames her determined face, and her hair escapes in wild, rebellious curls, as if trying to make a run for it. As she rummages through her silk purse, a luxury item that seems as out of place in this market as a peacock at a cattle auction. Her fingers brush against a copper coin. A victory dance is imminent, as if she'd just found the only four-leaf clover in Southwark. With it, she plans to purchase a bundle of greens from the vendor nearby, who is shouting about fresh holly that smells sweeter than your last breakup's excuses. The air carries a mixed scent of wet straw, roasting chestnuts, and that phenomenon we like to call London fog. In other words, you have no idea if what you're inhaling might be the seasoning for dinner or just ambition gone awry. With the ease of a magician pulling rabbits from a hat, the woman extracts the copper coin and approaches the vendor, who appears equally eager for a buyer and utterly resigned to the grim reality of her vocation. Fresh holly, good for hanging over your door, guaranteed to bring you luck, unless of course you're my husband, then it's merely decorative, she shouts, her voice ringing more true than the church bells nearby. Just envision this exchange. Our woman looks at the vendor, whose face is more animated than a stuttering puppet. 2 pence, she inquires, eyeing the vendor as if eyeing a suspect cabbage. This isn't a fancy soiree. It's a cold evening in London. Surely you'd accept a shorter price just as gladly as I accept disappointment on a daily basis. In this very moment, you can almost feel the humor, a gentle lifting of spirits through.
Muffled laughter among passers-by. Ah, the sweet dance of consumerism, you think. It's the same in my time. Pricing wars, haggling, and the pregnant pause of desperate negotiation. The vendor, clearly enjoying the banter, responds, "Dearest lady, this holly lasts longer than any of my romantic entanglements, so 2 pence it is." How often do we find ourselves bargaining for life's little joys, be it a mug of tea or even a piece of hearty advice that comes with a side of sass? As the exchange unfolds, you marvel at how life ebbs and flows, much like the London fog itself, thick, dense, uninvited, yet strangely comforting. But wait, just as the deal is struck, a scrawny street urchin, dirt-smudged, but with an entrepreneurial spirit that rivals Wall Street tycoons, darts past, snatching the holly before the vendor can secure it. "Free for the taking!" he yells, and off he scuttles, disappearing into the labyrinth of alleyways faster than your caffeine addiction can kick in. Life in London, where excitement lingers in the air, just like last week's potatoes. One moment you're holding your prized greens, and the next, poof, gone, along with your hopes of a festive decor. In this fast-paced bid for survival, amidst the unpredictability of 1850 London, a collective understanding forms amongst the vendors and passers-by. Humor is essential for survival, even if today's lesson will cost you a few coins and the chance to flex your sourcing skills. As you settle back into this cozy, chaotic scene, the rolling clouds of uncertainty part slightly, revealing the heartwarming truth that sometimes laughter is the best currency of all, no matter the year. So, dear listener, as sleep takes you by the hand and leads you gently away into slumber, remember the wild vendors shouting their wares, the cheeky urchin always ready to stir mischief, and the delightful shared humanity underpinning every quirky moment in this whirlwind of life that is Victorian London. Chapter 18. The Generosity of Halfpennies.
Hey there, delightful dreamers of the absurd. Tonight, we're diving deeper into the merry chaos of mid-Victorian London, where a halfpenny is a hot topic and generosity is as fleeting as a respectable hat in a windstorm. Now, just picture this. You're walking here in 1850, where everything is steam-powered, or at least propelled by sheer desperation and questionable hygiene. The streets boast an assortment of smells, some of which you might wish to bottle and forget, and a crowd more lively than a toddler's tea party gone rogue. Have you ever contemplated how many layers of grime one human can carry on their shoes while trying to navigate a world that feels more like a standing room only circus? Or how about that delightful thought of being offered something to eat that smells suspiciously like regret? Are you at a street vendor's stall or simply contemplating last night's dinner? And trust me, friend, you wouldn't last a day here unless you've perfected the art of dodging horse hooves and sarcastic remarks. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1850 London. The air is thick and damp, not unlike a first date gone terribly wrong, and just down the cobbled street you spot a Victorian vicar in black robes. Yes, the kind that shouts heavenly, but seems more likely to ask you about your eternal soul than your lunch plans. This particular vicar, beaming with that wholesome brightness unique to only a few, perhaps just delirious from the stench of the city, approaches a shivering child whose palm is as grimy as the ground beneath his feet. Let's take a moment to appreciate this wholesome exchange. The vicar, who appears as if he stepped right out of a particularly vivid Sunday school lesson, places a small halfpenny coin into the child's sturdy palm. It gleams in the dull light. Gleams might be a strong word. Let's say it glints hesitantly, like it knows it's not worth much, but is willing to try. Now picture the child's expression, a mix of shock, hope, and the bizarre anxiety of whether they should carefully lick the coin clean or just shove it into their pocket and hope for the best. After all, one small coin can mean an extraordinary game of chance. Do they buy a stale bun that's been out since yesterday? Or perhaps treat themselves to a pound of hope in the form of tiny, so-called fresh carrots that may or may not have been dragged through a puddle earlier? The vicar, with a smile wider than the Thames itself, leans down and says quite seriously, "Use it wisely, my child." Now this sounds profound, doesn't it? But practically, it means nothing more than buy something edible that won't poison you, if you're lucky. Ever had a helpful stranger give you advice that sounded wise, but felt utterly impractical? Like suggesting you jump into ice water to learn to swim? Yes, that's the Victorian charm for you. And now let's marvel at the absurdity of this transaction. When you think about it, a halfpenny coin doesn't buy much. Maybe a very controversial piece of peppermint candy, or a dubious treat of some sort. It's like finding a coupon for 50% off something utterly useless, but still exciting in a fantastical sort of way. The child, feeling the weight of this movable feast in their palm, plans their course with the gravity of someone about to pick their favorite dessert, all the while keeping a suspicious eye on the pigeons. You know, the feathered ruffians that have zero regard for personal hygiene and much less for your sense of justice. As the child scurries off, perhaps to contemplate if today is the day they venture into buying a snack, or waiting for something better, let's take a moment to think. What is this vicar aiming for, you wonder? Is he a secret philanthropist? A misguided angel? Or simply someone who feels that dishing out coins is an excellent excuse for avoiding his church duties? All fascinating questions, and one that you might contemplate while strolling through the muck of a Victorian street. In a world where a child's dreams hinge on the generosity of what might be left in your pockets, the scene strangely unfolds into a collective lesson in patience. Perhaps it's akin to ordering dinner from an unfortunate takeout spot today. Will it be edible, or will you regret the choices you made in those fraught 5 minutes of impulse? As the vicar collects his thoughts, possibly contemplating the next halfpenny he could give away, or why he finds himself dressing in all black while living in a city awash in color. Oh, look, over there, another vendor, merrily haggling over a basket of fresh vegetables, chuckling over prices that could only be described as wishful thinking. And you can't help but chuckle along, because in this land of muddied streets and unfathomable human resilience, there lies a certain charm in every penny, every exchange, and every pedestrian hustle. Remember this as you drift off into sleep tonight. Life is but an erratic cart ride through the streets of fate, with half pennies turning into dreams, pigeons swiping at your plans, and a vicar offering gentle reminders that kindness rarely comes wrapped in fancy packaging, but it's still always needed in the madness. So settle in, let the comfort of absurdity envelop you, and drift into slumber, knowing that even the smallest act of kindness in 1850 London could be the origin of 1,000 dreams, or the tale of a very confused child debating the merits of stale buns versus optimistic carrots. After all, life is merely a series of humorous misadventures, much like our sleep tonight. Time to rest, dear friends, for tomorrow offers another exploration into such wild, waking dreams. Chapter 19. The Flickering Madness of the Market. Hey there, lovely night owls. Ready to drift into the delightful absurdity of 1850 London? Tonight, we'll navigate the bustling chaos of a market at dusk, where the air isn't just thick with anticipation. No, it's more akin to a poorly wrapped sandwich, oozing mystery and the odd whiff of something slightly offensive. But hey, it's all part of the experience, right? Now, imagine yourself stroking your metaphorical chin, pondering how many layers of humanity can exist in a space so confined that it almost feels like being trapped in a sock drawer belonging to someone who believes in the beauty of lavender-scented fabric softener. Do you ever wonder what it's like to barter for a rotten tomato rather than pay for a decent meal? Or how about grasping for change like it's a wandering spirit? In this fabulous Victorian show, you'll soon realize that the only thing as slippery as a fishmonger's advice is the fish itself, especially when it's still wriggling. And in a place where horse-drawn carriages rule the road, let's be honest, you'd be dodging dung more skillfully than a dancer at a waltz. So, congratulations. You've just stepped into the exhilarating mishmash of 1850 London streets. The gas lamps flicker with a dim green light, casting eerie shadows that seem to have lives of their own, and the mist hangs heavy,
like that one awkward silence at a family reunion. It's dusk, and already the chaos is unfurling like a bargain bin rug, out of style but undeniably colorful. Picture yourself wandering through a market that seems less like a communal hub and more like a game of human Tetris gone wildly out of control. Stalls selling everything from dubious meats to questionable fruits are intricately packed tighter than a tin of sardines. A cacophony of voices rises, louder than the arguments of a family playing board games. Everyone's trying to out-bargain everyone else, and the stakes are as high as the nearest fog-covered lamppost, which is probably a few guineas away. You can hear the vendors bellowing tales of their latest fresh catch, fresh being a relative term, about as reliable as a Sunday morning hangover. One stall is run by a particularly boisterous chap who seems to think his charm can sell you aged garlic that's off more than just its prime. "Only a penny, my dear. You can pickle this for a delicacy," he shouts, his arms flailing like a windmill caught in a Los Angeles heatwave. You can't help but wonder if he's trying to sell you the worst recipe for a disaster salad anyone has ever dreamt up. As you squint through the thickening gloom, the hints of pungent fish and overripe produce mix into a fragrance you would dub the essence of bad decisions. Ever been trapped in that one elevator with too many people and absolutely no fresh air? Welcome to your olfactory nightmare, my friend. And then there are the people, bustling, jostling, and doing their best to navigate the mass of humanity like a group of cats at a dog show. You spot a market lady, her apron much too lavish for her wares, desperately trying to shove an unidentifiable pastry into the hands of a toddler who looks like he's about to choose between this culinary experiment and millennia of bad food decisions. "Try it, love. It's delicious, I swear," she pleads as the little one looks at her as though she just suggested a leap into the Thames. But who could blame him? In a city where even the pigeons look like they've just emerged from a mud bath, choosing your snacks feels less like a quest for sustenance and more like a high-stakes gamble. Will it be pleasantly surprising, or a trip to the local apothecary for some medicinal, like it could cure your lack of common sense? You might even question if your stomach can handle this blend of courage and culinary curiosity. What if I end up smelling like last week's laundry, you ponder? Suddenly, a street performer steps into the chaos, a doomsday astrologer equipped with a gleaming crystal ball. He's shouting prophecies louder than anyone else in the market, as if trying to predict the immediate future of a potato you might dare to eat. "Beware the spud of doom," he hollers, while gesturing wildly. And in a blink, someone trips over a wayward horse droplet and lands right at his feet. Neither party seems thrilled about this unexpected, impromptu meeting. And as the evening meanders on, gaslights linger dimly, like unwelcome thoughts trying to interrupt a good night's sleep. The mist grows thicker, swirling with an artistry that may not be appreciated until you accidentally stumble into a fishmonger's stall while dodging a wild-eyed gentleman marketing what he calls the finest pickled snail in the West. Spoiler alert, no one really needs that kind of drama in their life. As laughter erupts, and shouts intertwine with the bubbling chaos of the market. You find yourself chuckling along with the madness, realizing that it's all part of the quirky charm of this historical circus. Every squashed foot, every questionable pastry, and every excited haggler weaves together a fantastic tapestry of life in 1850 London, a place where absurdity reigns supreme and laughter might just be the best currency of all. So, take a deep breath and let the sights and sounds wash over you like a warm blanket on a chilly evening. Amid the flickering gas lamps, a cacophony of life unfolds all around you, offering sweet absurdity and a show that proves that sometimes, even in the heart of chaos, you can find a glimmer of charm in every half-baked moment. Let yourself drift, dear dreamer, into the warmth of the laughter hiding in these bustling streets. For tomorrow, we'll explore the depths of these delightful mysteries even further. Chapter 20. The Copper Coin Conundrum. Ah, the thrill of commerce. Nothing crackles with excitement quite like a small pile of copper coins resting on a rough wooden table, right? I mean, one could almost hear the metallic clinking, whisper secrets like a group of gossiping hedgehogs. In 1850 London, those few pennies weren't just shiny tokens of trade. They were the hard-won rewards of sweat and labor, more like the cherry on top of a monstrous sundae of mischief and muddle. Imagine this. You've just toiled all day, dodging horse hooves and the occasional flying potato in the bustling streets. And now, you're staring at those gleaming pennies, weighing your options like a medieval knight, deciding between dragon slaying and freelance knitting. Should I buy a loaf of bread, or perhaps treat myself to that dubious pie everyone's whispering about, you ponder? The agony of choice. One moment, you feel like a savvy investor. The next, you're more uncertain than a cat on a hot tin roof. To understand the significance of those copper coins, let's talk about basic survival in Victorian London. Days were not just filled with work, they were marathons of hustle and bustle. You either rolled with the punches or ended up on the wrong end of a caricature by some poor artist trying to capture the essence of desperation. Picture this. It's a gray morning, and you wake up in a second-floor flat that smells like a misfired experiment at a fish market. It's enough to make you wish you could pay someone to air out your life. Between dodging the peculiar smells wafting through cracked windows and leaky roofs, bless those piles of straw that served both as your floor and a natural flea circus, life felt like one long puzzle without an image on the box. But through it all, those copper coins glimmered like the promise of a future meal. Will I grab a steaming potato at Mrs. Plunkett's? Or should I risk my stomach on a hasty meat pie, deliciously questionable? Your culinary options felt like playing Russian roulette. A little adventure was appealing, but a good bout of food poisoning didn't sound like a fun Tuesday. And let's not forget the dreadful art of bartering. You'd approach a stall with all the bravado of a general preparing for war, only to find yourself entangled in a battle of wits that felt about as effective as trying to shovel clouds with a pair of chopsticks. The vendor, that amiable rascal, would start extolling the virtues of a turnip so rotten it looked like it had survived the Black Plague. Only tuppence, my good friend. Why, it adds character. Sure it did, especially if character meant gathering every stray neighborhood rat for a delicacy parade. You think bartering now is a tough gig online? Try doing it face-to-face, where pyramid-scheming vendors flashed all the charisma of a soap opera villain. But dear sir, this beautiful turnip could have tasted like sunshine, if only it had been planted in a sunlit garden instead of a bog. You'd nod, not quite believing, while mentally retracing your steps to the nearest apothecary to nip on something to settle your stomach once this encounter was done. And speaking of apothecaries, silver linings were usually found there in the form of remedies for all manners of ailments caused by all this food. You'd hand over your precious copper coins, praying that the claims about cures would hold up better than a hiccuping elder at a funeral. It's wild cactus juice, a miracle elixir, they promised, which always sounds enticing until you realize the wild cactus might actually be just a prickly bush in someone's backyard. Now, around this time in London, there existed a robust feeling of camaraderie that could rival even the warmest of friendships. Picture you and your fellow laborers trekking through the fog, pennies in your pockets, exchanging whispers about tomorrow's potentials, with every nook and cranny just ripe for adventure, and a nearly guaranteed misadventure or two. How might we stretch these coins, you'd wonder, pooling life strategies with tired laughter that echoed off the cobblestones like a serenade sung by drunken troubadours. But life in Victorian London was not all penny pinching and pie purchasing. Oh no, those copper coins worked too hard just to dull the pain of everyday life. At the close of each workday, gatherings could erupt like joyous celebrations, with people delightfully engrossed in discussions over the latest town gossip, or shared stories of the strangest things they'd seen, like that time Mr. Pickstone wore a hat that looked suspiciously like a crow's nest. And let's not forget the physical manifestation of joy, pubs. Your copper coins could transform into frothy tankards of ale, bubbles rising like tiny dreams escaping from a bottle. Some might even indulge in a game of chance, where tossing a few coins could lead to joyous win or devastating loss. You could practically hear the coins clinking in unison as they spread cheer and calamity alike, an orchestra playing the sweet notes of life. As the night wore on, you, entranced by tales and laughter, would find yourself wrapped in the warmth of camaraderie. And those coins, they were no longer just metal discs. They transformed into tokens of friendship, moments of silliness, and the nightly adventure of getting home without stepping into the mystery puddles of the London streets. So, dear dreamer, hold fast to that imagery and laughter. Let the echoes of camaraderie and copper whisper sweetly in your ear, for tomorrow we shall delve deeper into the delightful oddities of this Victorian era, where laughter is the finest currency of all. Until we meet again. Chapter 21. The Bread and Brick Blues. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a time deeper than your uncle's conspiracy theories at Thanksgiving dinner. Mid-Victorian London, where the streets were paved with hopes and quite a bit of muck. Picture this. You're trudging through a maze of tall brick buildings
that give off long shadows like they're shyly hiding from the dim gas lamps lining the streets. The air is thick, clinging to your skin with all the grace of an awkward hug from a distant relative. And what's that you've got under your arm? Why, it's just a modest loaf of dark bread, an everyday hero in this tale of survival. But first, a little housekeeping. If you enjoy this historical escapade through humorous discomfort, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment, but only if you actually enjoy this. We're sensitive souls, you know. Now, dim those lights, put on a fan, or a space heater, or flexible, and let's wrap ourselves in this absurdly rich tapestry of Victorian absurdity. Now, imagine this. How would you react if your biggest worry was not your internet connection, but a rogue horse careening down the street with unbridled enthusiasm? If the nearest pub was also the only reliable detox for dinner, serving beer as your main food group. Or maybe you're trying to enjoy a quiet evening, only to realize you're sharing space with a delightful family of mice, as charming as they are uninvited. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1850 London, where every day is a thrilling adventure in dodging horse manure and questionable food choices. There you are, strutting through the streets, clutching that loaf of dark bread, more precious than gold, and about as nourishing as a rock, if we're being honest. And oh, how it smells. Like baked ambition and old dreams layered over a hint of despair. All happening in a bakery where the baker has definitely forgotten to wash his hands. William, that's you by the way, sidles through the shadows cast by towering brick buildings that seem to loom with disapproval. As you walk, the cobblestones rattle underfoot. After all, they've seen better days, just like your sense of optimism. Each step is a reminder that even the ground beneath your feet has a story, usually one involving broken ankles and sudden trips to the apothecary, where happy promises of cures might come with side effects like spontaneous yelling or an uncontrollable urge to dance the can-can. Let's pause for a moment to discuss that loaf of bread, shall we? This isn't your artisan sourdough baked with love and a sprinkle of Instagram-worthy toppings. No, this loaf is more like a dense brick, solid enough to fend off a ghost or two. If you've ever regretted a late-night snack that tasted better in your dreams, you'll understand the struggle of not only eating it, but making it your whole dinner. It's like bringing a fork to a knife fight, hoping against hope it won't end in disaster. But you carry that loaf with pride, as though it holds the secrets of the universe, or at least the secrets of last week's potato rations. Every now and then, a pigeon eyeing your bread gives you pause, its beady eyes glinting with hunger and desperation. You're not sure if it's judging your life choices or merely coveting your meal. But one thing is for certain. You're now in an unofficial bread duel with a feathered competitor. Ah, the sounds of London. Horses whinnying as they prance about. Street vendors calling out their wares with more enthusiasm than the average person could muster for a Monday morning meeting. Get your hot pies, savory meat pies,
Guaranteed no rat hair, at least not too much. Life is an endless cacophony of chaos, and here you are, firmly ensconced in the middle of it, loaf firmly in hand. But as twilight begins to creep into the city, it brings with it the ambience of deep shadows and the distinct smell of regret. That unfortunate odor wafting from the alley where old vegetables meet the creative ambition of hopeful street urchins. They thrived on finding beauty in the seemingly unimportant and discarded, much like your aunt at a yard sale looking for vintage treasures that will eventually clutter her attic. You approach your modest abode, and as you walk through the entrance, a familiar sight greets you. A pile of laundry that looks suspiciously like an overstuffed hedgehog. A smear on the floor that blurs the lines between dirt and lifestyle choice. And the faint echo of your last good decision. Now on a long vacation, probably somewhere sunny and far away. That loaf of bread isn't merely a meal, it's a symbol. Much like your boiling resentment at having to deal with every aspect of the worst landlord on earth, who insists you call him sir, but behaves like he buried his last sense of decency somewhere near episode 4 of the Great British Bake Off. As you settle in for the evening, you'll take solace in the simplicity of your situation, a humble abode filled with the smells of the day, the dim light of flickering candles providing an otherworldly glow, and maybe a few rodents who are just trying to get by, much like yourself. In the grand scheme of 1850 London, you've made a significant choice that few could appreciate, choosing dark bread over your last inclination to join the ranks of pie enthusiasts. So, in tonight's pursuit of comfort, remember, dear listener, life in mid-Victorian London may be tough, but you've mastered the art of navigating brick and shadow, with a loaf of bread as your trusty companion. And who knows, perhaps tomorrow those city streets will have more surprises in store, like a friendly baker, or the elusive promise that one day that loaf might actually taste like bread instead of a doorstop. Until then, enjoy the dance of shadows and murky alleyways, and maybe learn to consider a pigeon a potential friend. After all, survival here is an art form, much like crafting a witty response to the inevitable "Do you have any bread?" question you'll face as you drift into dreams. Chapter 22, The Cozy Coal Catastrophe. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something warmer than your great-aunt's herbal tea, yet still somehow colder than your socially awkward friend at a party. The intriguing, if not utterly absurd life in mid-Victorian London, more specifically, a typical night at home. Imagine stepping into a room that's less quaint cottage and more slightly less chaotic version of a rat-infested art installation. Picture this. You're nestled in a tightly packed tenement, one of many bricks in the towering labyrinth. The kind of place that whispers secrets of survival while simultaneously holding its breath due to the pungent fragrance of dampness and desperation. The small iron stove in the corner is valiantly puffing away, exhaling puffs of smoke that curl like lazy cats, while the glowing red embers dance to a tune only they can hear. One that you're convinced is either the soundtrack of a Victorian drama or some sort of coal-induced fever dream. Now, let's play a little game, shall we? How many layers of clothing are you currently wearing? Because let me tell you, in 1850, a Victorian peasant would be wearing more layers than a well-baked onion, only with less promise of flavor and more lingering smells. Sound fun? What if your breakfast options were a potato that looked like it survived a tidal wave and a cup of tea so weak it had an existential crisis? Would you embrace it or just roll with the punches like a pro? You're shaking your head, realizing that you wouldn't last a day in this bizarre age. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1850 London, where coal is king and warmth is merely a suggestion. Oh yes, that tiny iron stove, your celebrated culinary companion, and, unbeknownst to you, the bane of your life. It struggles to warm the frigid corners of your room, where long-forgotten dreams of comfort huddle together like cold mice, flitting just out of reach. You plop down on your almost functional chair, more like a medieval form of torture than a piece of furniture, and gaze upon the flickering flames. What would I give for a bit of a breeze right now? The stove seems to sigh. Then it coughs, a sound reminiscent of someone who just tried to speak to their crush after way too long. Let's talk about the air, shall we? It hangs heavy, thicker than a pot of porridge left unattended on the stove. Every breath feels like you're inhaling a fine soup of smoke, coal dust, and a sprinkle of something that might be a small rat trying to escape the clutches of misfortune. Can you smell that? It's a delightful concoction of warming coal and desperation, mixed with the sweet nostalgia of burnt dreams. The aroma of Victorian living. Nothing says, "Come, settle in," like a whiff of soot mixed with the hint of threat from the bit of coal going rogue in the stove. By now, the cold is inching its way into your bones, each shard a reminder that heating is overrated and likely reserved for the elite. Besides, what's better than practicing breath control with your lungs clenching? A warm coat would help, but remember, your sole luxury is this beloved and often underperforming stove, which is really just a metal box that makes big promises but fulfills them about as well as an untrained dog fulfilling its pooping responsibilities during a walk. And oh, how this little marvel graces the humble abode with its presence. One moment, it's a glowing beacon of hope. The next, a hissing, sputtering monster throwing soot like confetti at the world's least enthusiastic party. Even the fireplace, if you're fortunate enough to have one, is as sluggish as your aunt after too many pastries at Sunday dinner. It sits there, looking all regal, yet merely adds to the collection of things that don't quite help with the cold. Meanwhile, your room is a patchwork of shadows and whispers, where every creak of the floorboards sounds like a ghost telling you to get your act together. You glance across the floor. Dirt, you say? Or a fascinating mix of memories, the occasional crud, and a promise of more pest-riddled company.
Yes, welcome to your life. Cozy, cold catastrophe with a side of nostalgia for a time when cleanliness might have had a fighting chance. As you shuffle around your room, avoiding that one suspicious puddle of bygone tears, because, honestly, have you ever had the chance to cry when there's so little to celebrate? You can't help but notice your neighbors indulging in equally absurd activities. In one corner, a determined woman fights with a broom, sending dirt scattering, while across the hall, a man lifts weights made purely of coal sacks, enthusiastically trying to impress dreams of better days. In these dimly lit hours, the warmth of those dwindling coals stirs camaraderie among your neighbors. You can almost hear their laughter bubbling up into the oppressive air. Perhaps it's that shared sense of suffering, or maybe the thrill of finding humor in the everyday despair. After all, surviving the air quality is a modern-day reality for many. Here, in the Victorian era, the same sentiment translates to dodging hangry rats while huddling near a stubborn stove, exhaling smoke, as if it's auditioning for the role of Best Supporting Actor in a Tragedy. As you settle in to face the night, reduce your worries to those familiar ember flickers. Just know that tomorrow, if your stove deems it worthy, it might actually offer warmth instead of just judgment. And maybe, if fate smiles down upon you and the coal remains resilient, you'll find solace in absurdly common interactions with your neighbors, sending sparks of laughter through the haze of coal-dusted asthma. So here's wishing you cozy dreams, mostly free of rodent interlopers and the lingering regrets of your life choices. The sweet dust of history, where every moment unfolds like a captivating patchwork quilt of comical survival. Rest easy, dear listener, knowing tomorrow is just another opportunity for absurdity wrapped in the comforting embrace of a thin blanket and just enough coal to keep you wondering, how in the world do they do this every day? Chapter 23, A Feast for the Feathered Fowl. Hey guys, tonight we are about to embark on a journey that's more decadent than a Christmas pudding in July, and yet somehow more wretched than the city's sewer stench. A typical evening in a Victorian family home, circa 1850. Imagine, if you will, stepping across the threshold of wealthier living, where lavish banquets contrast sharply with the faintest echoes of coal-encrusted survival. Picture this. You've just emerged from a grimy tenement, like a caterpillar metamorphosing into a bewildered butterfly, only to find yourself peering through a large glass window. A rare sight, I assure you. Inside, a wealthy family is gathered around a grand table, and really, they do look awfully festive. It's as if King Midas himself had a miscommunication with a local butcher, resulting in an overabundance of roasted bird, oak, and far too much wine. Take a moment to absorb this scene. The centerpiece, a roasted bird that seems to be the reincarnation of a plump, floofy turkey, lovingly arranged on a platter so shiny it could double as a mirror for the family's questionable hairstyles. Seriously, if you squint hard enough, you could be convinced that bird is glaring back at you, asking, "Why am I here? What did I do to deserve this?"
the aroma wafts up, rich and tantalizing, like a siren's call, luring you in from your coal-stained reality. What do you think is going through your mind, dear listener? Are you thinking about the staggering uphill battle to make a proper meal out of a measly potato? Or perhaps you're pondering how good old-fashioned British cuisine offers promises of flavor resembling a cardboard box at a charity event. You see, this family, a veritable parade of plumpness glistening in candlelight, is obliviously tearing into their feast while munching happily, utterly oblivious to the saltier realities just outside. Subtle joy radiates from them, those nobles, as if their unblemished riches somehow immunize them from the grit of daily existence. Let's imagine you're at the head of this splendid table, watching intently as the children, blessed with more energy than a Victorian railway engine, dive into a sprinting game around the room. A commotion unfolds as wine glasses sway precariously, just like your emotions whenever you try to handle a half-empty bottle at a dinner party. Who hasn't been there? Ah, the old keep the glass upright struggle. What innovations a Victorian child could make with those clumsy arms. And now, let's dare to enter the realm of polite conversation, a dance more treacherous than walking on cobblestones during a rainstorm. Do you suppose Lord Morton will win the election? One family member might casually inquire, adjusting their ruffled collar as if it might suddenly explode. Another counters with a critique of Miss Penelope's fashion, as if determining the fate of civilization rests on whether it's appropriate to wear a garish hat to afternoon tea. Did you notice how, in a room full of opulence, the most engaging topic remains absolutely banal? Not to be forgotten, let's address the garnish, a sprig of parsley, awkwardly lying alongside the bird, like a guest who overstayed their welcome. Look, dear, they've attempted to bring health into the dinner through greenery, you might chuckle quietly to yourself. Nature, bless her heart, didn't stand a chance on this evening. The bird glimmering in its golden glaze surely made dreams of robust kale shudder in fear. And oh, the clinking of fine china. It captures the musical essence of frivolity, light-hearted, yet echoing with a dreadfully familiar ring of pretentiousness. Every clink is reminiscent of brittle bones rattling in laughter, or perhaps just your poor neighbor trying to smack one of those evasive rats with an elegant teacup. You have to give them credit. Balancing culinary delights with pest control is no small feat. As they dig into their feast, the family's laughter dances above the smoke of a crackling fireplace, where a fire blazes like an overzealous sparkler. Bizarre, but beautiful. You might even hear the sporadic crinkle of a napkin and the laughter of children who are undoubtedly fighting over the real prize, a sticky, gooey fig pudding anticipated with the reverence of a holy grail. How quaint and absurdly luxurious. Fig pudding. What rebellious essence. But remember, if eating is an action of love, who thought inviting figs to the mix would enhance the recipe for disaster? Now, dear listener, take a moment to consider. Would you really want to be part of this scene? What happens if one of the guests accidentally confesses their deepest secrets, only to find your head buried in a fig pudding dilemma. What if this family's supply of wine had mysteriously turned into a fine, earthy vinegar? The horror. As the spectral whispers of children reach a crescendo, accompanied by a grand toast of goodwill, the air thickens, filled with more festive cheer than a public holiday. And yet, beyond the glass, all is not as it seems. The children resume their antics, ducks quacking near the pond, completely oblivious to the layers of grime coating the window through which you gawk. In this moment, however fleeting, your ears quiver in delight, as if they've just heard that warm sprinkle of laughter transitioning into the stillness of your meditative sanctuary. So, take a deep breath, drift into the essence of that Victorian laughter from the other side of the glass, feeling the warmly kindled contrast to the cold irony of life just outside. Tonight, may your dreams drench in the joys and absurdities of a Victorian feast, reminding you that while the rich might dine clumsily on roast fowl, the real feast lies in the humor of survival, even if it's only over a respectable potato and a dash of fig pudding. Sweet dreams, dear listener. Banquet's warmth is yours to embrace, all wrapped up in the quirks of a history that feels hilariously close and just beyond the pale. Chapter 24. Huddled Heroes of Victorian Winter. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a scene more cramped than a London subway at rush hour and chillier than your aunt's side-eye at a family holiday dinner. That's right, we're about to experience a Victorian winter night in 1850 London, where the idea of keeping warm revolves around more than just putting on a sweater like we do today. So, let's huddle up, shall we? But only if you actually enjoy that kind of warmth. You know, like snuggling with a cat who hates you occasionally. Imagine, if you will, a small bedroom shared by a mother, a son named William, and his sister Clara. They're all bundled together on a single bed, trying to combine their body heat like a trio of human heaters attempting to solve the Rubik's Cube of thermal comfort. It's basically a Victorian version of a human origami project gone awry. Now, let's think for a moment. How does one prepare for a night like this? Do you grab the latest Victorian fashion? Or do you settle for whatever woolen rags resemble a longing for warmth? Spoiler alert, survival is the only fashion trend of the era. If you ever thought about rolling out of bed in just a cozy pajama set, imagine doing the same while wrapped in a quilt that's half flannel and half mystery. What's that smell? Oh, just your last 3 meals fighting for dominance. A delightful combination of boiled turnips and, whatever that was last week. As the wind howls outside, rattling about like an old man boasting of his youth at a pub, you might find yourself wondering if a bed full of loved ones is really love, or simply an act of self-preservation. The cold in Victorian homes is no joke, more relentless than an enthusiastic door-to-door salesman, and it creeps into the very marrow of your bones, making every sneeze sound like the dramatic opening of a Victorian opera. But back to our trio. Nestled together, William is practically hugging Clara, who is a lot less enthused about sharing intimate moments
than she is about staying warm.
William, if you keep that up, she mutters, I'll have to charge you rent for the space you're using.
Ah, sibling love, where even in the frostiest of nights there's still room for a repartee sharper than a Victorian's finest cutlery. Now let's consider their surroundings. The walls of their tiny abode are likely plastered with peeling paint and a healthy coat of soot, perhaps resembling a modern artist's attempt at a grunge aesthetic. Picture a mural of culinary failures. The weeping turnip of 1850 could be a hit. And if they're really lucky, there might even be an old tapestry on the wall, an heirloom that flamboyantly displays flowers that probably haven't been in bloom since Queen Victoria was crowned. So fresh. The decor really says, "Welcome to mediocrity. Please leave your idealistic dreams at the door." As the siblings huddle together, their breaths become visible in the chilly air, intertwining like wisps of a ghostly fog, a sign that this isn't just a family bed, but a winter survival unit. Each shivering giggle bursts forth like a firework of defiance against the bitter winds clawing at their rickety windows. What about laughter, you ask? Laughter is crucial. It's the real fashion accessory of the Victorian era, sometimes louder than reality, and softening the edges of despair like butter on a hard biscuit. You might hear their mother shushing them softly, her tone somewhere between, "You kids need to sleep. I can hear the rats plotting over there," and, "If you don't settle down, I'll throw the cat at you." She lays curled up, wrapped in whatever blanket manages to still be a blanket, and not a jumble of fraying threads and existential dread. And just then, an eerie howl pierces the night, sounding as if a banshee is auditioning for a winter-themed musical number. Ah, yes, you might think. That certainly adds to the charm of shared family warmth. What could possibly be more enticing than an overzealous ghost vying for your attention? Who needs Netflix when you have auditory renditions of fright crafted by the winds outside? As they settle down for the night, you can practically feel William's thoughts weaving their way through an impressive daydream. Perhaps he imagines escaping this frigid nightmare by transforming into a brave knight, questing for the fabled woodland blanket, promised to warm any soul who merely gazes at its mythical softness. Spoiler alert, it's made up as much as half the folk tales you're told at friendly gatherings if they didn't involve the glittering tales of naive princesses. But let's take a moment to ponder this disaster. Would you survive just a day in Victorian London? The rattling of the bed is not unlike a train coming to a halt, clattering, confused, and maybe you just went airborne. Honestly, that bed seems to be in a constant state of negotiation with gravity. And oh dear, imagine popping up the next morning. Do you tackle chores head on? Or find sanctuary beneath your quilt, arguing for the right to exist in a bed made for three? Truly, life back then was like being an unwilling contestant on a game show where the challenge is simply try not to freeze. The grand prize might just be the opportunity to roast your socks in front of the hearth later, while loudly pretending you have other plans. Dear listener, remember, surviving winter in 1850 London was not merely about warmth. It was a test of relationship dynamics, hilariously tangled cover stories about the cat's mice escapades,
and dodging frostbite while sprinting for dinner. So huddle close as we venture deeper into this expertly woven tapestry of hardships laced with mirth, all while trying to keep warm in the extraordinary absurdity of Victorian life. Now, may your dreams tonight twinkle with the warmth of
absurdity and life.
tissue paper soft, sprinkled with shared laughs under a single quilt, protecting you even from the frost giants loitering outside.
Chapter 25.
A gray miasma of gaslight dreams. Hey there, dreamers. Picture this. You're tucked away under a quilt that's a little more reminiscent of a patchwork puzzle than a cozy blanket, like a winter-themed macrame art project gone rogue. And tonight, we're stepping into a London fog thicker than a politician's promise. Get ready to wander through Victorian-era London in 1850, where the only thing more palpable than the cold was the smog, which undoubtedly had an agent and was due for its own starring role on an industrial-sized stage. Now, let's set the mood. Please dim the lights, turn on that fan, because the temperature outside is about to drop to the depths of despair, and settle into your favorite armchair, preferably one that's not covered in cat hair, or better yet, buried under the weight of existential dread. Now, I have a few questions for you. Ever wandered through a fog so thick you could almost hear it whispering sweet nothings about the tragic life?
Choices you've made.
Or tried to light a candle in the middle of said fog and ended up just giving it a sad little performance? Maybe you've experienced rush hour on the tube and thought, wow, this is cozy. Or, I don't know, tried to catch a bus in the rain while simultaneously rooting for the chicken or egg debate? Well, congratulations, my friend. You've just woken up in 1850 London, where all manner of adventure, or misadventure, awaits. Let's talk about that infamous London fog. It's rolling over the rooftops like a ghost with a vendetta against fresh air, wrapping every flickering gas lamp in a grisly hug of winter gloom. You step outside and find it's not even a proper fog, but more like a heavy blanket of indifference that settles over the city, making even the bravest pigeon reconsider their life choices. It's so thick, you could practically spread it on toast, should Victorian culinary arts ever stoop to that level. Now, as you stroll down the damp cobblestones, your nose is assaulted by the mixed aroma of coal smoke, unidentifiable street food, and the vague, haunting memory of last week's cabbage. Each breath feels like a fragile agreement you're making with the universe. I promise not to cough loudly if you promise to let me find my way home. Ah, the sights and sounds, the dreamy glow of gas lamps bathing the streets in a sickly yellow hue, reminiscent of cheese left out too long at a picnic, and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carts rumbling by. Imagine a symphony composed entirely of horse hooves and the occasional disgruntled shout from a street vendor lamenting their fate. It's a blend of city life that feels like a bad theatrical performance, chaotic and yet somehow fascinating. Now, let's look at the people. You can see everyone wrapped in layers of wool and linen, all sprinting about like nervous squirrels trying to navigate an acorn convention. Furs are illegal for the common folk, but that doesn't stop everyone from wearing any furry animal scraps they can find, including, yes, a possible raccoon tail here or there. Chic or shocking, you might ask? The answer is, quite simply, both. And speaking of people, have you ever seen a Victorian pedestrian slip and slide through what can only be described as a frosty mélange of mud? It's less of a graceful glide and more of an embarrassing dance number performed on an ice rink that mysteriously appeared in a back alley. One moment, you're just trying to get your newspaper, and the next, you're a multifaceted tragedy in motion, limbs flailing as you become the confused center of attention. It's a performance worthy of the West End. Oh, and let's not forget about the noises, the cries of street hawkers trying to sell everything from fish pies to questionable remedies for the vapors fill the spaces between bursts of laughter and chattering teeth. Madam, I assure you, these will cure any ill from cough to make-believe sadness. They might as well be offering you mind-reading services alongside, because who wants to explain the state of their romantic life when you can simply buy some soda water and call it a night? Now all of this glorious chaos creates a vibrant backdrop against which our dear friend William and his sister Clara maneuver. Out of that thick atmosphere, you can practically see them emerge, a pair of siblings dodging the drudgery of everyday life, bantering about anything and everything. Clara, do you think the fog has feelings? William asks, peering into the thick gray. It's just jealous we're having all this fun. I'm sure of it. And as you stroll along, you might encounter the scene of a poorly executed public debate about whether or not gas lamps, now installed in every corner of London, were indeed the height of Victorian technology, or just the city's latest energy crisis waiting to happen. My dear listeners, as we drift through this evening's haze, remember, life in 1850 London wasn't merely existing. It was wading through a thick soup of absurdity, where each step forward could mean anxiety, hilarity, and surprise. So, snuggle deeper under those covers, feel the warmth rising, and let your mind wander through the whimsical fog of past and present absurdities, where every corner turned could unveil a new misadventure, and the real journeys are often just between the gas lamps and the bewildered citizens of London town. And tomorrow, we'll dive back into the bustling and bewildering world of Victorian London, where every snort of laughter can knock the frost off your bones. And now, as our long wander through 1850 London comes to a quiet close, breathe deeply and let the last images settle like evening fog. We have marched through tenements where frost crept across the walls like hungry vines, tasted porridge that could double as masonry, listened to the cough of a city surviving coal and cold, and stepped with questionable grace into boots 2 sizes too big. We have watched children run barefoot over cobblestones, fingers red from winter air, but laughter still somehow escaping between chattering teeth. We saw mothers sewing by candle stubs, stitching hope into the seams, and men sweeping streets that never truly stayed clean. We crossed the sulky Thames, wrapped in fog thick enough to chew, and smelled life at its rawest, unfiltered, unpolished, unforgettable. They lived with less than we do now, less warmth,
less comfort, less certainty, yet they carried on, day after day, step after step. The human spirit, even in the darkest corners of history, has an odd way of lighting itself from within. They found joy where they could, laughed when laughing made no sense, loved even when life felt unbearably hard. As you lie in your soft bed tonight, warm, safe, clean, fed, let gratitude rest beside you like a gentle companion. Let this old world remind you how far we have come, how blessed your breathing, your blankets, your lights, your tomorrow truly are. Close your eyes, deeper, slower, like London fog fading into dawn. Release the noise of the world beyond your room. Let every worry melt, every muscle loosen, every thought drift like lanterns on a quiet river. You are safe. You are warm. You are here. And sleep is waiting to hold you.